host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. We have quite a bit to discuss tonight. Tonight's theme is echo chamber. You know, we do not have an echo chamber on this show, but many of the stories tonight deal with this particular issue. We're going to bring in the panel first. So I want to show you what we're discussing tonight. We're doing something a little bit different on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we are discussing TYT Coalition Test Panel. We're going to test something out to see if Jank and Anna could be onto something here. Is it possible that we could have something in common with those who are on the right? So that's what the panel is about tonight. We're also going to discuss the Obamas raise more questions. What's happening there? You'll see there's Michelle Obama smiling, Barack Obama not so much. We're going to get into that story. We're also going to discuss Donald Trump's executive orders. We'll go through that extensive list and what it could or could not mean for you. And last but not least, the best news I think that has happened this week is Leonard Peltier's clemency. The Peltier kids will be on later on tonight to celebrate that here with me. They are very happy, and I am too. But without further ado, I do want to go ahead and get started with the panel. So Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian have decided after Kamala Harris's loss that maybe they should try to work with people on the right on the issues where they agree. And so tonight, the panel is about that. We're going to try to find out, are there certain issues where we may agree? And what are these issues where we disagree? And is there a way to work around that? So let's go ahead and bring in everyone one by one. Welcome. Let's bring in Jason. All right. I'll just move myself here. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Jason, I don't know if you have a light or anything in front of you. I just wanted to make sure people can see you. But it's totally up to you. But let's go ahead and get started with introductions. So let's start with Case. Introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Case Study QB. Basically, I'm like the unofficial producer for a lot of your favorite independent media shows where I clip a lot of mainstream media and even independent media clips that I feel that are relevant to our community, which is the left. I'm mainly on the left. So, yeah, that's what I basically do, mainly on Twitter or X. Yeah.
I think people are very familiar with case studies clips because a lot of us use them in independent media. Let's go to Nora Christine.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank Sabby for this opportunity. I am Nora Christine. I am the co-host and producer of The New Party. We are actually a panel-style podcast. We've been at this for about 8 months now, and we have the left, the right, and the in-between on our show. And I would say, I guess I'm representing the conservative side. I consider myself an independent Christian.
All right, let's go to Jason.
Hi, Sab, and hi to all of the rest of the panel for having me on. I'm a bit newer to the political commentary space, but I started a couple years ago on TikTok, which I'm very thankful is not banned. I'm not sure if we're going to get into that today when we talk about censorship and other issues. But I really look at the news from a progressive point of view, really trying to get past a lot of the spin that both parties put on a lot of information just to give people the information and the insights I think they need to really understand their political moment. I'm no fan of the extreme right conservatism that we're seeing from Donald Trump and his MAGA movement, but I also realize that the Democrats are very complicit in us getting to this moment. So I really try and analyze politics from that point of view and with that perspective. And I'm very happy to be on and to talk more with all of you about that.
All right. And last but not least, Dana.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dana, and I have my YouTube channel called The Real Dana. And I do live shows with me and Judge Joe Brown. We talk about politics, we talk about the law, pop culture, and I also have Dana with the Data. I talk a lot about the illegal migrant crises that's going on and everything else in between. So I am a Republican. So I guess you could call me a conservative, but I don't get too much into labels. Yes, I am pro-Trump.
All right. So the panel tonight is Left Meets the Right. So this is the first time the very first time I've had this on the show. I've had a number of panels where we all talked about the voting issues, but this is the first time we've done the Left Meets the Right. So we're going to see if there's areas where we agree. I do want to start with this clip here so people understand where this is all coming from. Many of you may have seen this already, but this was Cenk Uygur having this conversation here with Mark Lamont Hill. So I want you guys to listen to what Cenk says about trying to work with people on the right.
So I've got to rewind all the way back to about a year ago to explain that. Because if you had asked me a year ago, would you go to AmFest and talk to Charlie Kirk? I'd say, I mean, is he ready for what I'm about to do? Right. And so what happened? I started being deeply concerned about 15, 16 months ago about Joe Biden. And I was like, this guy's falling apart at the seams and we got to beat Trump. And there's no way in the world this guy's going to beat Trump. And so both because of his mental decline, but also because of the numbers. The numbers were overwhelming. Anyone who knew politics understood he had no chance of winning. That's why I had strange bedfellows before the right wing with David Axelrod and James Carville and other people who could read numbers and realize that Biden was going to lose. So as you might remember, I ran against Biden in the primary just because I got so desperate. I was trying to bring progressives into the race, and I tried to bring governors into the race. I'm like, somebody's got to beat Trump. And so then when I ran in that act of breaking glass in case of emergency, just to try to push out Biden in any way, shape, or form, I started going on a lot of shows, and some of them wound up being right-wing shows. And in the beginning, I was just as skeptical as a lot of folks on the left are now. But slowly, I started seeing something. And so, guys, I don't want to get it twisted. It's not like I started saying, "Oh my God, the right wing they're all angels, and none of them have any bad intent." So no, of course not. That's any description of 77 million people that boils it down to any extreme is comical, right? But what I did start seeing is things that surprised me. Like they really do hate not just Mitch McConnell and Dick Cheney, but they hate the concept of war because they think it wastes our money. They think they hate the concept of corruption, and I think that they actually do hate corruption, but they're blinded to Trump's corruption, right? And so the more I saw and the more I started to feel like, wait a minute, there's actual populists in those hills in a way that was really encouraging. And Mark, the reason why it's encouraging is at the end of the day, in order to do something that is grand, something that actually regains our democracy, something incredibly difficult like getting money out of politics, at some point I've always known, and I've said this for over a decade, that the right and the left, you have to unite against the establishment. So for the first time in my life, there's a shred of hope that actually could happen. So that's what opened me up to having further conversations, including going to AmFest.
Okay, let's start there, right? So this is where a lot of this comes from. Case, I'm going to start with you because you were the one that brought this up on the call-in show. Mm-hmm. What does everybody think about what Cenk Uygur said there about the possibility of working with people on the right? And I want to start with you, Case.
Yeah, sure. I'm a big believer in the political ecosystem theory where basically everyone has their part to play. And I think that Cenk, he's now coming around to this part of playing the in-between between the left and the right and trying to find commonality. I think in the past, they were more on what I would say the Democratic side, and evidence of that would be like Russiagate. They didn't believe that, they believed that Trump was being controlled by Russia. And I was on the side of a lot of the left that did not believe and Russiagate. But it seems like they've come around to be more skeptical and not going along with the mainstream. A lot of what the Democrats have been putting out there, because that's something that Hillary Clinton put out, Russiagate. And it seems like they're taking a chance to, or specifically Cenk, of going on various right-wing podcasts and trying to make the case of finding out what they have in common. And I think that's the most important thing, is that the devil is in the details. What are you agreeing on? Are you going there just to agree on whatever they're saying, or are you going over there to find commonality on things that we can all, both on the left and on the right, can agree on? And something that he's come up with, and I brought it up on my computer, the populist plank he's calling it, is higher wages, paid family leave, no more wars, negotiate all drug prices, money out of politics, ban private equity from buying up homes. So if that's something that people on the right can agree with, then I think that would be a great win if we could get those things out of a Trump administration.
Okay, so in cases representing the left, let's go to Dana, and let's try to keep the answers a little bit short, just to stay on time. And I know I told you guys like an hour, I believe. Dana, what do you think about what Cenk Uygur is trying to do? Do you think that is possible from your experience?
Well, I'm a little bit familiar with him, but I think what it sounds like, he's talking about like a bipartisan politics. So if you are, let's say, a diehard Democrat, however, if like the Republicans control Congress and we have Trump in office, you have to learn, okay, I want to be a part of it. I want my input to be heard. So what can I do to kind of help create policies that's going to benefit all America? So even though, you know, my views and ideology are different from yours, we could still come to a common ground that's going to better this country. So that's what I took from that. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that a lot of people are not focused on getting things done. They're just more focused on your person is bad and we're better or we're good. It's just too much back and forth. So I think he's coming from bipartisan when it comes to politics.
Interesting. Jason, how do you feel about what Cenk is trying to do?
I would echo some of the sentiments that Case expressed earlier about the devil being in the details. You know, and thinking about this panel and how we were going to talk about these different issues, the first thing that came to mind is, you know, the first issue that we have to get around, kind of the elephant in the room, is really the issue of Donald Trump, because where this debate becomes very unproductive very quickly is when you hear a lot, you know, we've heard all the time about Trump is like this anti-establishment figure. He's a populist figure. He's supposed to be the voice for the people, silent majority, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is when you see the difference in the rhetoric that Trump uses and the people around him use, the supporters use, versus the reality of what both of his administrations are and have been, particularly this one that he's just created now, which is by far the wealthiest in all of American history. It really quickly begins to break down. It's like, well, we can't have a sensible conversation about what it means to be anti-establishment when the person that most fits that definition in our current political lexicon is literally supported by the wealthiest man in the world, who will probably be a trillionaire by the end of his first term, and is about to unleash an unprecedented level of grifting, corporate grifting in this country, which is really saying something in America, where corporate grifting is really how we've run our political system more or less for nearly half a century. So if we're thinking about areas of alignment, we have to be really precise about what those areas of overlap are going to be. And while I think I'm somewhat pessimistic in the way that our recent politics have become polarized, not just because of Trump, he certainly hasn't helped, but certainly around him, I'm still hopeful. I'm a law student. I'm in my last year at Harvard Law.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be very quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, no one goer. Sorry for taking up the time. But basically, I have a friend on campus who's extremely conservative, you know, has doubts that Biden won fairly in 2020, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is that in all of our political conversations, which we still continue to have despite deep political disagreements, the one area of overlap that we had is getting money out of politics. I think if we're going to focus on cooperation, maybe we put the specific issues over policy aside and focus at a high level. It's like, hey, we all realize that billionaires having too much control is a problem. Let's think about how we can move beyond that system. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. And Nora, what do you think about what Cenk Uygur is trying to do?
So I want to go back to what was going on in our country at that time. The Democrats basically hijacked the election. We need to remember that. They wouldn't allow a primary. They basically had Biden go and run, and they didn't allow any opposition. So I think we're forgetting the simple point of this, that to have a free election and have a free country, to have a free country, we have to have a free election. And that was totally bypassed at that time when the Democrats did what they did. They knew that Biden was not fit to run. They knew that mentally he was not there. So they basically put him out there. They had him debate Trump. And then finally, when the whole country, including the media, finally stepped up and said, hey, he's not ready to run, that's when they ushered Kamala in. To me, that's the definition of fascism. And they love to talk about Trump. And I don't want to bring up Trump, but the guy on the left did. And the point is, fascism is a way when one ruler or one small group control the country. And that's pretty much what they did by not allowing a primary. So again, I have to go back to the whole point of this was Cenk felt that we have more in common and we should have free elections. And that wasn't being done. So he ran to shake up the establishment. He ran to challenge and go against what the media was saying. And I remember Cenk speaking out and saying, Biden is not fit, and no one was listening to him. And so that was why, and I'll be honest with you, I'll be transparent. I wasn't a Republican. I wasn't a Trump supporter. I didn't change that I was going to vote for Trump until around that time period with the debate. Then when they tried to assassinate him, that was what did it for me. When I saw that there wasn't a free election and they were going to try to take this man out. And I don't know who the they is, but you get what I'm saying.
That's interesting, Nora. That's an interesting point there. My perspective about this is I kind of just thought that Cenk was just trying to find another way to make money. Like I like that. That's been my perspective. When he was running for president, he was also selling a book at the same time. It just seemed to all line up for Cenk Uygur. So that's kind of how I looked at it. I also think that there is something that has happened to the progressive movement, or what was the progressive movement, where there have been wins on the local level for some of those progressive policies, but on the national level, it didn't happen. $15 minimum wage didn't happen. Universal healthcare didn't happen. So it almost kind of seems like TYT being the home of the progressives. Part of it for me, I think, is Cenk trying to find a way to continue that brand. And I don't think the progressive movement is doing what it used to do, because there's no more Bernie Sanders presidential election, that type of thing. So it may not be bringing in the money the way that it used to. But then another part of it, I feel, is that it seems like they want to get some type of a win. And since 2016, with this progressive movement, there just has not been a win on the national level. Just a reality. But so let's see if there's agreement on some of these issues. I want to start with one of the ones that I think is really more pressing, which is healthcare. I think we all have seen what has happened with the healthcare industry, regardless if you're on the right or the left. The Luigi Mangione case in particular, I think, has brought this back into the public spotlight again, the healthcare issue. Is there agreement there? So for me, for example, as a leftist, I think that we should have a universal healthcare system in this country, the same way that they do like in Denmark, or like a nationalized healthcare system that they do in the UK. I don't understand why this country, as wealthy as it is, does not have a universal healthcare system, except for the historical reasons behind it, which one of them is that they did not want Black people to have healthcare. That's where a lot of this comes from. And then, of course, the corporate interest. I want to start with one of you on the right, Dana. What is your perspective about healthcare? Is there agreement there? Do you think we need to have a universal healthcare system or a different healthcare system?
It needs to be different. I mean, our healthcare system has always been about capitalism. It's always been broken. Obama made it worse with Obamacare. But universal health care, yes, that sounds good. However, I don't want Canada's universal health care. I'd rather probably have a Denmark or another whatever other European country. Can we have universal health care and top quality health care? So now we're talking about quality and quantity. So if we're going to give everybody health care, what is the quality that's going to come out of that? And how much is that going to cost? Or our taxes going to go up? So it's more for me a battle of quantity and quality. Our healthcare system is controlled by the pharmaceutical companies. They control how much premiums that the healthcare companies are going to charge us, and claims of, how much they're going to pay in claims and so forth. So it's an ecosystem going back to capitalism and industries like healthcare and pharmaceutical to where it's all about money. So if we take that out and we make it universal, what kind of quality is going to come out of that?
That's a good question.
Decrease? Are we going to invest in Americans going to school to be good doctors? Because we do have a doctor and not so much nurses, but we have a shortage of doctors, and that is because it's you can't afford to go to school to become a doctor anymore. So it's like an ecosystem. You can't just get rid of one if you don't have something to replace it with that's going to be better.
Interesting case.
Yeah.
I know you support universal healthcare. What do you think about what Dana said there about the quality?
Yeah, I hear what you said, and I don't know if she expressed. Well, she didn't express support for universal healthcare, which is understandable coming from the right. But I did hear. I would be curious to ask Dana if she would agree, something that we can agree on, which is what this is about. Would you agree on Medicare being allowed to negotiate all drug prices?
Isn't Medicare for old people?
Yes.
So
Medicare is a program that
Medicare is not for all Americans. It's Medicare, Medicaid. So, you know, I listen, I don't pay too much attention to Medicare because I ain't there, but Medicare is designated for old people.
Yeah.
So are we talking about the older population?
What would happen is if Medicare negotiates for drug prices, and they would do it in bulk. So think of Medicare as representing the government, and then the government is basically, think of it like a union where we all have our power come and say, hey, we want you to make a profit, but we don't want you to make obscene amount of profit. So we'll give you this amount. And once Medicare negotiates that for it is an elderly program, it by default would make the price a lot cheaper overall for all Americans. That's usually how it works.
For prescriptions.
For prescriptions, yeah. This is specific.
But then the pharmaceutical company will have to agree with that, and so they're not going to. Why?
Well, if they are allowed to negotiate, then they would have to decide if they want to make a profit or not. So
who would have to decide to make what profit? Pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, the pharmaceuticals, they would be incentivized to, because they do it with all the other countries. By the way, it's only in America that we don't negotiate all drug prices. They do this in other countries already.
Because the pharmaceutical company tells you the price. There's no negotiating. They have
and that's what we want to start
to tell you what the price is. So you're saying you want the government to come in and regulate pharmaceutical companies so that they won't overprice Medicare people, older people who are on a fixed income.
I wouldn't even say regulate. I just want the government to come in and negotiate.
Negotiate what?
The drug prices.
So so the government comes in and say, can you lower your prices for insulin? No.
Well, they did that under Biden. I think Trump just with an executive order took that away. But the Biden administration did allow Medicare. They said they were going to pay, I think it was capped at $35. And I think that's a little bit differently. That's literally governments coming in and doing price controls. That's a little bit that's more to the left. I'm just talking about negotiating prices, period.
But the pharmaceutical company, they're not trying to lose money. So if the government come in and they want to negotiate for them to lower prices, pharmaceutical companies are going to come back and saying, well, you're going to have to pay us more to cover what we're losing. If something costs $50, I'm charging $50, but you only want me to charge $35, then you won't have to give me that $15.
Can I jump in here to say something?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't want to take this up.
That debate. I'm like, you could apply this to a lot of things other than healthcare, but we can focus on it now since we're talking about that. And anytime I think about reforms that we want to make to systems in the United States, even ones that other countries have, I always try and think, well, one, they just can't copy and paste whatever they're doing somewhere else to America. I'm like, how would this actually work within the American political system as it currently operates, particularly with the outsized influence of money and concentrated corporate interests? So, Case, when you were talking about government negotiating through Medicare, I'm like, well, I know what the next step of Pfizer and all these big pharma companies is going to be. They're going to try and get one of their people to be Secretary of the Department of Human Health and Services so that they basically end up negotiating with themselves the same system that we have across multiple industries. Agriculture, big ag is regulating itself. in the financial sector, the banks are regulating themselves. Like, we have these quote unquote regulators who are supposed to be looking out for the public interest, but because the politicians that appoint these people are bought by said corporate interests, we never get anyone on the other side of the table actually working for the American people. The first time we got just a little sneak peek of that with what Lena Khan was doing at the FTC, corporations saw this for 4 years and said, she's out. From right to left, I don't care who they donated to in the 2024 election. They all said, we need to get rid of Lena Khan, and they did that. So it's like, we have to think about how this would actually work in our system, and what would the next step be for these concentrated corporate interests who are always going to try and find a loophole to use our own government against us.
That's a good point. Let's bring in Nora. Nora, what's your take on healthcare? How would you feel about universal healthcare?
So I have a different take than Dana, only because I have a healthcare administration degree. And so I have studied this. I do think we need universal healthcare, but how would that work in our country, right? I mean, Case, and you brought up a good point, that we would have to get the pharmacy companies in line, and they are one of the biggest lobbyists in America. Like, they are putting up the money and controlling our politicians. So for that reason, I don't think it would work. But ideally, for me, it can work. I mean, Taiwan is first place in the world for healthcare, and they have a socialized medicine, socialized healthcare. So is it possible to work? Yeah, we just have to put in the work to do it. But I will say, I think Obamacare did make things worse, unfortunately. And that's the reality of it. I don't know if it'll ever work, just because we have a lot of corporate greed with pharmaceutical companies. And I'm going to say this, and this is the last thing without saying too much. Look at the vaccines, and that's all I'm going to say. It was $1 billion industry. They didn't take the time to test it, unfortunately, and this is what we saw. So I don't think it'll ever happen, because it is like, they do control our politicians. But I think it's possible if we had everyone getting to the table to put in the work.
Can I just say real quick, Sabrina, that Nora, I totally agree with what you said, and that's why I don't have faith in the politicians, and that's what this meeting is about, is us coming together and collaborating, because I have more faith in what you just said. You have more experience with this than me, but you understand, even from the right, how universal healthcare is a better possibility. So I just want to say that I have faith in you, Nora, not the politicians. Go ahead, Sabrina.
Thank you.
But Nora isn't creating policies. Nora doesn't pass laws. So
it's okay. When we all come together, we'll have the power.
We'll come together to do what?
When we organize. But go ahead, Sabrina.
Throw this out there. Just real quick. When we talk about these pharmaceutical companies, corporations are considered a person.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, declared by the Supreme Court.
14th Amendment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big thing when I look at the healthcare issue is, I think that if we want some type of collaboration when it comes to healthcare, I think number one, for those of us on the left, and I wrote an article about this, we need to stop saying that healthcare is a right. And the reason why I say that is because when you say something is a right, some others who may be opposed to like leftist policies, they may look at, when they think about rights, they may think free speech, things that don't cost money, right? So I think when you say healthcare is a right, you might get pushback from some people about that, because to them, a right is something that the government doesn't pay for, they don't have to pay for. I think the way it needs to be framed is that healthcare is a necessity. When you say that, and it is, when you say that it's a necessity, I think more people might gravitate towards it, because the reality is, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. If your health is poor, that can affect your work. I've seen people get laid off from work. I've seen people lose their jobs because they had an illness. So the reality is, if you don't have your health, what do you have? So I think this is where, like, I think those of us on the left, I think we need to change the way we frame some of these things. Like, healthcare is a right. Healthcare is a necessity. Maybe we can start with that, because people need healthcare. It's kind of the way that I see it. But I think what I'm hearing so far, like general consensus, is that the healthcare industry that we have in this country right now, the healthcare system is not working. And it seems like I'm hearing that from both sides, whether we all agree on how to pay for it or who should pay for it. This is a really big one. Luigi's trial, I believe, is in February. So this will be a even more heated conversation at that time. The next one I want to get into is censorship. And all of us create content in some way, shape, or form. It so happens to be that way. One of the big things I think a lot of people push back on under the Biden administration was the censorship, whether it was the Twitter files that was released through Matt Taibbi and other journalists, or whether it was just the censorship on places like, look what just happened to TikTok, how they said TikTok has to go because China may get access to the data, all these different excuses. And I'm very much concerned about the government coming in and shutting down apps and shutting down speech and silencing people. And it makes me wonder, how far is this eventually going to go? So I'm curious where people on the right may feel about censorship. This time I'll start with Nora.
Censorship is awful, whether you agree with what someone says or not. I don't agree with any censorship unless it's something harmful to someone's health and personal safety. I believe that we should have free speech for all, free speech in any topic. I think we saw it going back to the big C. There was extreme censorship, and I don't agree with that, because even Mark Zuckerberg admitted this week that the government asked him to censor people. And so what the right has been saying for the last 5 years, that censorship existed, he finally admitted to. So I feel like we were vindicated because of that. And yeah, censorship is fascism, and I don't agree with it. I know the left loves fascism, so I'll link it back to there. It goes back to Nazi Germany. They censored people, and that's how they were able to do the things that they did. So I don't agree with any censorship at all, whether I agree or not agree with what you have to say.
All right. Case, I know you've dealt with more so suppression, particularly on X. How do you feel about the censorship issue? This is one of the things I think that I do agree with Donald Trump. This is one of the executive orders I do agree with, was pushing back on the censorship.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the places where the left and right can agree that we need to fight censorship. You know, like you said, it was the Hunter Biden laptop. I was shocked to see how far they went with the censorship by taking down links that reporters would put up, and any story that was put up on X at the time, or Twitter at the time, and on Facebook. And it seemed like they collaborated to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story initially. I think it was about a year or 2 years ago now. And now we found out that it was actually legitimate. So that's something that definitely the base of the left and the right can definitely come together and say, we need to find out how we can systemically make sure that these big social media conglomerates keep not censor us as well.
Well said. And don't forget, guys, Glenn Greenwald left The Intercept because they wouldn't allow him to publish the Hunter Biden laptop story. So it happens, not just on those social media platforms, but also with some of those publications like The Intercept. Dana, what's your position on the censorship issue?
Well, I'm glad Trump signed the executive order yesterday restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship. Because when you go back and think what happened during COVID, they were shutting people down left and right who wanted to talk about COVID and talk about the vaccines. So under this previous administration, that's all we experienced, was all type of censorship. And on top of that, you have George Soros, i.e. and his son, buying up 400 radio stations. So that's major censorship. And today in Congress, Senator Kennedy, now he acted like a fool during that shooting in New Orleans when he did that press conference. However, he wanted to talk about, did Congress investigate, his purchase of these 400 radio stations and media outlets? That is a problem when you talk about monopolizing freedom of speech. But George Soros and others like him, oligarchs, wealthy billionaires, powerful people, they throw their money to a lot of left, liberal, Democrat politicians, and they take it and they abide to his rules and regulations so that they could make sure they keep passing policies that's going to benefit someone like him or their agenda. So, yeah, it's a big problem. But now that Trump is in office, we're going to chip away at all that.
Interesting. Jason, censorship.
Yeah, well, I'll be directly responsive to the point that Dana just brought up. And well, I'm sure if you have a problem with George Soros buying 400 radio stations, you would similarly, by the same principle, have a problem with Elon Musk taking over the largest social media platform in the world. And after saying he was doing it to restore free speech, literally going out of his way to artificially interfere with algorithms to promote political content from one side of the political spectrum versus the other. So I think we're all in agreement that censorship is bad, but I think now in the ways in which the major communication platforms in the second Trump era have moved steadily towards the right, first with Elon Musk and the Twitter buy, and now Mark Zuckerberg statements that we have mentioned earlier, Nora, which were I'm not sure, I'm not going to opine on Mark's mental state, but I'm sure there was a lot of self-interest and wanting to get himself into the good graces of Trump. So maybe after Trump unbanned TikTok, maybe Meta could buy it or something. Who knows? I'm sure he has a very clever business play left, but I think we're all for non-censorship, but now I feel like for the next 4 years it'll be interesting to see what happens, because the ball is very much in the right's court. They spoke so much about the censorship, much of which I disagree with, that happened over the last few years, but now that they are having more direct influence over the flow of information, I want to see how much they're going to stick to their own principles of wanting free and fair debate and not putting a thumb on the scale versus repeating some of the same behaviors that they criticized when people on the left did it.
I want to ask you a question real quick, because you brought up Elon Musk and X. How can you compare that to George Soros buying up 400 radio stations? It's a difference.
X has like 1 billion, I think, monthly users by Elon's own estimates. I think the official figures are like 600 million, but he does a lot of things, inflates the numbers. And also, it's not just that he owns it; it's that we have evidence that Elon selectively tampers with the algorithms in order to promote.
You don't have evidence for that. That's not proven. You don't have evidence.
I can send you links or articles if you want afterwards.
This is one media platform, and he does not tell people you can't say this, or you can't, Democrats, you can't talk about this, Republicans, you can't talk about that, independents. He doesn't do that. But George Soros buying up 400 independent individual like iHeart, Blog Talk, buying it up, terminating and firing people who are Republicans, conservatives, or other than, that is censorship. That's dictatorship at that. So this is one company that he bought. It just so happened that millions and billions of people use it because of the freedom of speech, because of the lack of censorship. So there's a difference there. You don't like it, and that's fine. You are entitled to that, and you're entitled to tweet it. But at the same time, he's not prohibiting you for saying what you want to say.
I never said he was prohibiting people from speaking.
Let me jump in here for just a second. Elon Musk has banned, and I've seen him ban left and right wing accounts. More recently, he banned people on the right who criticized his comment about the H-1B visas, and these were big right wing accounts where he just takes them off because he doesn't like the fact that they're criticizing him. That's the danger with someone like Elon Musk when we're talking about censorship. He had already started banning people on Twitter on the left, but this was the time where it pivoted. And I saw him censor people and ban people on the right who criticized him because of the comment that he had about the H-1B visa. So he does ban people.
Then he restored it. And my thing is, it's a private company. When you talk about radio stations, which is FCC regulated, it's a difference. But at the same time, George Soros do more censorship than Elon Musk. You talk about night and day. So you can't compare that. And you talk about one social media entity app at that to 400 radio stations.
But I think that the thing is here is this is the thing where I think tends to happen a lot, particularly in political spaces. There's the right versus the left, and one side is saying, well, your side does it more, and the other side is saying, no, your side does it more, when the reality is censorship shouldn't happen, period. Elon shouldn't ban people, shouldn't silence people. George Soros shouldn't be buying up. None of this should happen, period. It's very dangerous. And like when I say I'm pro free speech, like to me, that means everything. Like I may not like what you have to say, but the danger that comes with this that I've tried to warn people about before. I remember people were celebrating when Trump was kicked off of Twitter. Then the next thing I know, people on the left start getting kicked off. Like I watch people on YouTube get either their channels were removed or whatever, regardless if they were on the left or the right. We've seen censorship left and right. So it goes across the board. So I think the point that I want to get across is that it shouldn't happen, period. And what I worry about is when we get into these teams, and then the next thing you know, it's like we're focused on who does it more than the other instead of focusing on the fact that it shouldn't happen at all.
No, but we need to focus on that, because the bigger picture here is when you look at George Soros buying up 400 different radio stations, and I just gave 2, iHeart and Blog Talk, and then you have a lot of AM stations, particularly in different states. The difference is when you left people want to talk about how you have these corporations buying up homes and neighborhoods, monopolizing the real estate. It's the same thing what George Soros is doing. So you can't have it both ways. So you have one man controlling and monopolizing our airways, but you have one person in Elon buying one app that majority of Americans, or all of Americans and all of people around the world use. That's one app. Now, me and you, we have YouTube channels. There have been times where I hide people from my channel. I block people or I time people out. You could consider that censorship, but I have a right to do it. But that's one channel. I'm not telling you because you want to talk about Democrat Party or Democrat politics, you cannot. You can only talk about this. That is censorship, yes. And George Soros is monopolizing what is put on the FCC airways, and that is a problem.
I don't think anyone on this panel approves of what George Soros is doing. Just clear.
No, he does, because he tried to defend it by comparing him to Elon Musk, and that's apple and oranges.
That is not what I said.
Development companies buying up homes, because that's the same formula that George Soros is doing when it comes to our censorship.
If you are going to criticize what I said, please repeat what I said accurately.
You just compared.
Hold on. Please let me finish my response. You did. Yeah, I didn't. I just started responding to you. Hold on, give me 1 second. I'm trying to
do the same thing, and he did not.
I started off my answer by saying that for the same reason you would think George Soros buying 400 radio stations is bad, you should also have no problem condemning what Elon Musk is doing. And by the way, I don't know what stat you are looking at, but I can bet you anything that X has a wider global reach than any radio station or combination of radio stations in America. Radio is a declining medium. Everyone is getting information on the internet of all generations. I'm not justifying what George Soros did. I am just, especially after Trump's
you are assuming that.
I'm going to say one more thing. Dana. We can move on to the next topic. Sorry, Seth, we're dragging it out.
He also brought up social media.
But after Donald Trump won re-election, because the richest man in the world backed him by spending over $250 million on his campaign, I don't want to hear any more about the boogeyman of George Soros. He just made a George Soros protege his Treasury Secretary. The party that has been complaining about George Soros for decades, they literally have one of his key inner circle inside people now running the Treasury Department. Donald Trump brought that to, not Joe Biden. So I'm just saying that all of your anger at George Soros shouldn't just be limited to him. It should be the entire cabal of billionaire elites that we now just brought into the. Elon Musk has an office in the White House now. Within 2 hours of the inauguration, hold on.
I had to mute both of you because we can't hear you because you're talking over each other. So please, just one at a time.
Sorry, I was trying to finish my answer. I was saying that Elon already has an office in the White House and a White House email address. George Soros never got any of that. So if we're going to be against billionaires having influence in politics, let's be about that. But don't make it this partisan game of, well, yeah, billionaires are bad, but George Soros, your billionaires are even worse than our billionaires. First of all, that's factually not true. Second, even if it were, that shouldn't mean we should not have a principled stand against billionaire elitism.
First of all, I never said billionaires bad. You did. I ain't say nothing about billionaires because you know what? Billionaires are in every administration. Billionaires control a lot of the policies that are being passed. So your focus is the billionaires. Do you think I care? Elon Musk got an office in the White House just because George Soros did not. He still controlled every politician on the right and the left. So what are you talking about? Billionaires are not going nowhere. Both parties deal with oligarchs. That's just the way it is in society, and it's been like that for centuries.
Okay, well, speaking of oligarchs, let's go to the next one, which is labor, because we got to get to the money situation here. So obviously the federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. Some people didn't realize this until the presidential election, that some of these swing states still have that $7.25 an hour wage, like Pennsylvania, for example. It's 2024, so the minimum wage hasn't been increased since Barack Obama's administration. How does everybody feel about the labor issue? Like, do you feel that we need to get to a $15 minimum wage, which if you live where I live, $15 an hour, we have $15 minimum wage in Massachusetts and you still can't live off of that here. So how does everybody feel about that, about increasing the minimum wage or having a living wage? Let's go to Nora.
I want the left to go first. I'll let them go first and I'll respond because I would love them to get their talking points out first.
All
If
right,
you're okay
Case.
with that, Sabby.
Okay, Case. Minimum wage or living wage, how do you feel about that? You're muted, Case.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm definitely for increasing the minimum wage to at least. I think that it does matter what state it is, but to lift the whole state up, should at least get to $25 an hour. We should help out the small businesses if they need help. But I think definitely corporations overall, Walmart, the Amazons of the world, those that have obscene amount of profits should definitely be having a minimum wage of $30 an hour. But I'm also a big believer in helping unions unionize. I'm also a bigger believer even over unions in worker cooperatives and workers being able to build their power. I think the government should help people who come together to start a business, to start a small market, a supermarket, help them, give them a small business loan, and then help them build a co-op.
All right. Nora.
So my response is, unfortunately, just because you raise the minimum wage, it doesn't affect poverty. In fact, it's going to do the counter to poverty. It's going to affect small businesses. I don't think we should have higher wage. Do I think $7.25 is enough? No, but I've seen them say they want to pay McDonald's workers $20 an hour, and I think that's crazy. I don't think that it's going to help us. It's going to hurt small businesses. It also will drive companies to have automation. I mean, how many times do you go to the grocery store and you see all these self checkouts? There's less workers in the industry because they're not hiring workers. They're automating it so they can counter these minimum wage arguments. So my argument is, no, I don't think it should be an outrageous amount. Do I think $7.25 is enough? No, I think it should be at least $10 or $11. I mean, because that to me is minimum wage. But at the same time, I'm against a minimum wage that's ridiculous, like $15, $20 an hour.
But if you do the math, going back to when the minimum wage was increased to $7.25 an hour, if we would continue the math up until last year, we would be at 15. And this is a part of the problem because we didn't continue the increases along the way. It just stopped at $7.25 an hour. I do hear where you're coming from about the small businesses. We did try to increase the tip wage here in Massachusetts, and it didn't pass via ballot measure. And the reason being is because a lot of the people that own restaurants and the mom and pop restaurants heavily came out and voted against it because they said they couldn't afford to pay people that increased wage. Let's bring in Jason here as well. Jason, what do you think about increasing the wages for or labor for this country?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that last point because I was going to mention just having a minimum wage that keeps step with inflation, I think should be a fairly non-controversial item. And then secondly, I think on the issue of small businesses, at least, and how it's going to impact them, I don't see any reason why we can't have some sort of graduated approach in the same way that we have, at least in theory, to our income tax system, where it's that the wage that businesses have to pay, and apart from any increases for inflation, I think it should be largely subject to the size, the revenue of the business. I don't think McDonald's should be following the same rules for paying their employees as a single shack mom and pop store. So I think just more broadly, we have to be thinking about ways how can we make life easier for the average American, and similar to the healthcare system discussion we were having before. I'm open to thinking about creative ways to figure it out, but as long as we're asking that fundamental question of how should we actually address this problem, because it is something that is worth tackling.
Good point. Okay, let's bring in Dana.
I kind of agree with Jason with that, his reply. Yeah, because McDonald's, they could afford $25 an hour, but McDonald's, okay, yeah, we're going to increase it 15, but we're going to switch over to AI to automation. So we're going to have less workers, right? So corporations, they find a way to get around it. And yeah, it stopped decades ago. So minimum wage has not been increasing with the increase of the economy. And that is a problem. But also people need to start making more money, get another job, or getting into fields that's going to pay you more money that is above minimum wage. So people are going to have to tie up those bootstraps and do more as well.
Can I say one more thing?
They're not going to roll over and say, okay, we'll give you a pay more. No, because the reason why minimum wage never went up is because they were able to subsidize labor by bringing in, by outsourcing it or bringing in outside labor in.
I don't agree with the bootstraps theory, because I think nowadays and age, I think it's inevitable that particularly this younger generation is already having a more difficult time and a more tough time. I'm encouraging people to go to trade schools instead of going to four-year university, because if you are going to have to take out student loans to attend four-year university, my advice to people is that if you're not going to make at least $100,000 a year, don't do it, because it's not going to be worth it. In the end, you're going to end up with a lot of debt. So I encourage people.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Trade other than minimum wage. Do something else, like invest in yourself in generating a skill. In trade schools, a lot of people make more money going to trade schools than 4 years. So
yeah. Go ahead, Case.
One more thing I wanted to bring up is that, as we go towards automation, because it's going to happen regardless, it's inevitable that AI and robots, etc., that, I don't have a lot of faith in McDonald's. We're using that as an example, that let's say you have a McDonald's that's fully automated. They're still going, I'm pretty sure they're still going to charge $6 for a Big Mac, even though they have zero labor costs. Now there's going to be other costs, but all their labor costs is gone. It should theoretically go down to, let's say, 10 cents, 25 cents for a burger if you can get rid of your whole labor cost. But something that should definitely be thought about is a UBI. I'm not an economist exactly on how that would be implemented, but we should start looking towards that UBI as automation and artificial intelligence start taking away more jobs. People have to find a way to survive. So I think that's something that we got to look into.
This is something that Andrew Yang and both Elon Musk have warned about, that as AI continues to increase, it will get to the point where some people will have to leave their jobs because those jobs will be automated, which is unfortunate. But it seems like that's the direction that we're heading in because of the way that technology is going. Alaska does have a UBI, by the way. Alaska is a red state. They get it every year from the oil industry. I don't know if with the UBI, I don't know if it's something that maybe should be done on a national level or if it should be done by state. I don't know. But I do see a lot of money being wasted in ways that I think that we could avoid in this country. The next one might be a little bit of a touchy subject, but we got to talk about it because this is a big one. And some people told me this is the reason why they voted for Donald Trump, because of this particular issue alone. And that's immigration. And I think this is where we may find disagreements. We may find differences here. Let's start with Jason here. When it comes to immigration, the big thing right now that's happening, Donald Trump did sign executive order saying that it is an emergency crisis at the border. He is ending birthright citizenship. What are your thoughts about immigration and what do you feel should happen?
Oh, first, let me say that even before Donald Trump arrived on the scene, we had a far from perfect immigration system, and there were reasonable reforms we could talk about not just what do we do about the southern border, but also how do we what should we do with the millions of Americans or people who are here that have not come through legally. The problem that I have with what has happened with the immigration debate post Donald Trump is how it's really become a really toxic and racialized political controversy. I mean, it was really chilling to see at Trump's rallies this summer going into the election, like the signs with the mass deportations now, and when children were being separated from their parents at the border, which I know happened under both Obama and Biden as well, and it was wrong when it happened under them as well. But when those facts started to be publicized, the way that a lot of people on the right, not everybody, but there were enough voices who were sort of reveling in the sort of cruelty towards those families, and just in the ways that Donald Trump has talked about immigrants poisoning the blood of the country and those S-hole countries, the entire debate, and of course, obviously the Haitian immigrants eating pets and dogs. It's like, I think the rhetoric that Trump has introduced into the immigration debate has been very unhelpful and I think very dangerous. And now he's going to use it we're going to see what all the rest of these executive orders do, but I think he's going to use it to enlarge and aggrandize presidential powers in a way that we frankly haven't seen since 9/11. And I'm very concerned about what that's going to mean for civil liberties. We already saw he's trying to end by executive order birthright citizenship, which is so textually in violation of the Constitution, but it's an open question as to whether the courts, particularly the Supreme Court, a third of which he picked, will actually enforce what is written there. So those are the things that concern me about the immigration debate, not the issue itself, but the ways in which it's been weaponized and radicalized to serve the agenda of a very radical right-wing administration.
So here's one thing I want to point out really quick before I go to Nora, and this is a good point from Mike. Biden deported 1.7 million, Trump deported 1.5 million, Obama deported 5 million. So each one of these administrations have participated in deportations. It does seem like to me, I know Trump seems to be the loudest about it, but it does seem like to me people are not willing to point out how many people Joe Biden deported as well. I feel like that doesn't get enough attention, particularly in liberal spaces. Let's bring in Dana.
Can I reply to that comment? Because those numbers are so skewed. Because all right, Biden deported 1.7, but he let in 50 million. So what is this for? This means nothing, because Trump, how many illegals came in under Trump? Let's just say 2 million, but he deported 1.5. Obama, he loved deporting. He deported 5 million. Let's just say 7 million illegals came in. But this one, Biden, 50 million came in. He only deported 1.7. So this number is skewed.
Well, I just want to ask this question and then go to Nora. Well, actually, let me pivot back to you real quick, Jason. Where was and I think a lot of people don't talk about this, where was the outrage when Obama built the cages? Because I understand people were upset during Trump's presidency when they saw the kids in the cages, but where was that same outrage from the left when Obama built the cages? Where was that same outrage when Obama was doing the same thing? And could part of that be because of the media, how corporate media presented it and made it seem like this didn't happen under Obama? What do you say about that?
Yeah, I think honestly, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the same way that all the concerns about Biden's age were also concealed by the media. It's like, especially when you see the legacy media, they're like, okay, like our guy is in charge. We can't let anyone, it doesn't matter how fair or reasonable the criticism is. They always try and twist it and gaslight us, saying that, well, if you're actually bringing this up, you must have some impermissible, really terrible motive. So it's absolutely, and we're seeing that a lot now. After Jimmy Carter died, taking the second administration of Trump, I think a lot of the halo that was over the Obama administration is generally fading and has faded for a lot of people. So this is by no means letting any presidential administration pre-Trump off the hook, which is why I focus my response not purely just on the actual facts on the ground of who's deporting who and the ways in which they're deporting people, but it's one, I think Trump's rhetoric, which in and of itself is dangerous, and two, the ways in which, so Obama, as he was quietly deporting people, let's say, and the media wasn't really publicizing it, he wasn't declaring national emergencies and deputizing the Department of Defense and telling the Department of Homeland Security, we're going to treat this like a terrorist invasion. Those sorts of massive increases in presidential executive power, that's new. That's what Trump is doing right now, and we'll see what these executive orders look like in the coming weeks. So I guess it's a little bit too soon to say, but if he just does the things that he said he would in his campaign pledges, I think that should just raise a lot of civil liberties concerns, because just based off how these things work in history, if we think that it's going to just stop with the illegal immigrants that people really don't like, I would have a lot of concerns about that. In the same way they told us they were only going to wiretap terrorists when they were listening to our phone calls and doing all these massive dragnets and searches under the Patriot Act.
And MLK, they wiretapped MLK too.
Oh yeah, 100%. Oh yeah, that was funny. That the FBI also had another happy MLK Day post. I'm like, one day y'all are going to realize that this is just not it.
The thing is this: we love to focus on Trump's focus on the immigrants. And yes, I understand. I'm a child of immigrants. Both of my families came here and immigrated here. So I understand the hurt that is attached to that. But why is he focusing on immigrants? We're missing the why. The why is, the reality is there is crime in our country from immigrants, whether we want to admit it or not. People got all up in arms and offended about Lincoln Riley, but I think as Americans, we should have united on that. Why was that okay that happened? Why didn't we all unite? Why didn't we all unite when that lady was burned on that train and that immigrant was able to illegally, he got deported and then illegally came back in the country? We should be focused on these things. And also, the other big issue that most on the right are concerned about is the crime at the border, the drug trafficking, the sex trafficking, the child trafficking. There are hundreds of thousands of children that go missing at that border. Why are we not having a bleeding heart for those children? That is my thing about why I have an issue with the border. This is the one topic I'm very knowledgeable about. And I have to say, another issue is I don't think it's fair that just because of proximity, people can just come through the border when there are people worldwide waiting for amnesty in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in places like that, because we have an immigration problem and people can just walk through the border and come in through proximity and say that they are trying to get amnesty. And then, there's a script that they say at the border, and they're not true. In my opinion, they're not truly there for amnesty. The truly people that are there are waiting patiently in their countries waiting. And we can disagree on that, but I feel very strongly about that.
Nora, is your experience, because what I've heard from most voters that I talked to that also either they were immigrants or their parents were immigrants, they were heavily against illegal immigration. And I think this is something I think the Democratic Party missed when they were surprised that Donald Trump was able to win more of the Latino vote. So the Democrats lost the Latino vote. They also lost the Black vote, which they don't really want to admit, but the numbers do show that. I think this is something that they overlooked, that just because someone may be Latino doesn't mean that they all agree with illegal immigration. And I think again, there's certain things I feel like they're not talking to everyday people out on the street.
Mm-hmm. Look at Miami, Florida, where I'm from. The Cuban vote is predominantly, overwhelmingly Republican. Why? Because they align with Republican values. They don't think it's right or fair that people can come through the border. And then people look to them and say, but you're Hispanic. Why don't you care? Yeah, we care. We have a heart, but there's laws and they need to be followed and allowed. And also they realize that person took a space and a spot for their family members that are patiently waiting in their country to come here. And I think that's what's missed as well. There's law and order, and we're not able to have that when, unfortunately, the border was flooded. And again, to Dana's point, 50 million, we don't even know the true number. I mean, we don't know who came through the border. And the last is the actual safety and security. People want safety and security, and that's important in the Hispanic community.
Okay, let's bring in
Hispanic, but yeah.
Let's bring in Case, and then we'll wrap up with Dana.
Yeah, something that a lot of people don't bring up, and I definitely don't hear in mainstream media enough, is why are they coming? Kamala famously said, "Do not come." She went there and said, "Do not come," but she never went there and find out why are they coming, or that side of the subject is never really talked about. And a lot of it is because of American foreign policy throughout South America, installing dictators, putting sanctions on various countries. There's a lot of gangs that we collaborate with. And because of the violence, a lot of these people from other countries migrate and come to the border. So I think there needs to be acknowledgement of that and finding out why, and seeing a lot of people don't want to. They're so desperate that they take their family, their children, like you said, a lot of them go missing. And even sometimes they just send them through illegal means to the border. And what makes them so desperate to do these things? And that needs to be a question, and find out how can we allow them to safely remain? How can we help different governments to have to take care of their citizens? And we give a lot of foreign aid, which I don't agree with all foreign aid, but if it's to help a country provide for their citizens so that they don't have to come, I think that would be a more humane way to deal with the border than what we're doing right now.
I think it's important to mention that. Thank you for mentioning that why as well, Case. I think that's important. Dana.
Yeah, I don't care about the why, because our laws. The why is it's America, this United States of America. Everybody wants to come here because they want that American dream. Now, a lot of people do come from shithole countries. I'm sorry, that is the truth. Some of those countries, we may have had a hand in it, but whatever, we're America. We are the dominant country in the world. So I don't care about the why. When you have a sitting president and our whole administration opened up that border to let over 30 million, I said 50, but realistically it was over 20. So it's between 20 to 50 million being scattered, breaking our system. Sanctuary city laws were not for that, but they're flocking to these sanctuary cities, which is predominantly Black. They were given resources that they did not pay taxes into, while Black people are still starving and homeless and have horrible education. But on a state level, the things that these people were given and the humanity, and you mean to tell me that you can't house our military, our veterans? You cannot make sure that kids are not going to school hungry or have a proper education, but you could give you can actually give half a $500 million in the state of Illinois in 1 year to illegals. But that money can't go to the American people. When you talk about the minimum wage, when you talk about healthcare, and when you talk about housing and all these other things for education. So I don't care about the why. Lock them up, send them back, shut that border down. They got to go. Yes, it's unfortunate that a lot of children came through that border via coyotes. Now, I don't know why these parents would allow that. Well, whatever is going on in your country or how bad it is, you need to do what Black Americans has done in this country and stayed and fight. Also, Venezuelan president opened up the prisons and let them come here. The same with who's that damn president of Cuba that died? Fidel Castro.
Castro, Cuba.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Right. So he opened up the prisons there. This was, I think, 70s or 80s. So it's diluting this country. It's breaking the economy. Is breaking the criminal justice system. Is breaking cities, and it's not being invested in the American people. But we're paying for it. That is a problem. Now, this birthright citizenship executive order that he signed, and he wants to send it through Congress to get it passed. Yes, that's going to end up going to the Supreme Court. Maybe it's going to have to be an asterisk when we talk about the 14th Amendment. It has nothing to do with Black Americans. That does not affect us at all. But you talking about birthright citizenship, people who never pay taxes, but they want to have anchor babies and get social services off our backs. No. So I don't care about your why. Take your why and figure it out in your own country.
Well, I always think the why is important, because some people say that to us, Dana. Some people say that to us when we advocate for reparations. They say, I don't care about the why. So I do think it's important to hear about the why. Even if we may not agree with what is happening, I think it's important to know the why.
No, it's not, because I don't want to hear about your why when you don't pay taxes here. You do not contribute to this country. You don't even fight for this country in our military. Your why means nothing to me. Now, me as a Black American, if I say reparations and somebody want to ask me why, I could give you a reason, but I could care less, because I know how to operate through our system here, our government system, when it comes to public policies, advocating for public policies to get what we need for our specific group. So I don't care if you agree with me or not, and I'm talking about for other groups out there, whether you agree with reparations or not, that has nothing to do with you. It has to do with our Black people coming together to figure out what public policies that we need to pass to get what is owed to us, no matter what anybody else says. So that makes America great. No matter how you feel about something, if you know how to advocate and have access and allocate these laws for public policies for your group, just like every group does when they come here, then you're going to get stuff done. But when you are not from here and you pay no taxes and you are breaking the law, you are not a refugee. You are not part of the amnesty. You're not. You just wanted to come here because that crazy person that just left the White House said you can, and they're going to give you all of these resources. So F your why, because that means nothing to me when people are starving in my own neighborhood.
I don't understand why you say that.
Can we talk about the why of the starving Black kids, of the starving Hispanic kids or Asian kids?
Yeah, but
let's talk about the why of these
okay, I heard you.
boys.
I heard you talking about the why.
No. Let's talk about the why of the Black boys who have this school to prison pipeline. Nobody's not talking about that why. But I'm supposed to ask you the question about the why you coming here at the border? No.
So I just told you that our government has they purposely go into other countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, Chile, commit coup d'etats and totally destabilize these countries, and that's why they come here. And you're like, no, I don't want to hear that.
I don't care.
Oh wow,
it's called politics.
I guess that's where
this is how the world. This is how the world been working since the beginning of time. Since government,
humanity and me cannot agree with that.
Back to the Roman times, when they invaded other countries, took a lot of those people into slavery. This is nothing new. But I'm an American, and I'm here. I need to make sure these borders are safe. I need to make sure this country stays strong, because I'm not going to be on that other side, on the third world, in a weak position. So it's either me or you, and I'm going to make sure that I'm winning every time. This is survival of the fittest.
So one thing I will say is we obviously do not agree on immigration. This is a big one. We do not agree on immigration. But another thing that I want to add is I think that this country, number one, is not what it used to be. And I think I highly recommend that people watch some of the economists that are on YouTube. The days of America being this phenomenal empire is over. We're never going to get back to the place where we used to be. And part of that is because there are other countries that are competitive with us in the capitalist market, which a lot of people who say they love the free market need to accept the fact that a country like China is doing very, very well in that free market. And we can't blame, and I always say this, we can't blame China for that because we sent jobs there. So there's that part as well. But closing down the border, and this is the point I want to get across to people, closing down the border is not going to make the United States have this economic boom. I do want people to understand that. So where we used to be, we're not getting back there. Everybody's got to get that because we are already behind. We don't produce anything here. Everything that we get comes from someplace else. Even some of the small mom and pop shops that you go to, they get the products and the materials from other countries. We don't even make the auto parts. A lot of the auto dealers, they get the parts from Mexico. How many times you went to the store and you bought something and they said it was made in the United States? We don't produce anything here. So even shutting down the border, this is the point I really want to get across. That's not going to give us this booming economy unless we start building things here in this country again, which I don't see happening.
Well, I disagree with you. And here's why.
I disagree too.
Because you need to shut that border down because it's like your pipe bursts. We have a flood. So you're going to have to plug it. You're going to have to fix that. So you have to shut the border down. It's not going to happen. This golden age that the Trump administration is coining this term, it is going to be a golden age, but it's not going to happen overnight. However, if he gets a Democrat come in the next 4 years and not a Republican or J.D. Vance or someone to take over and continue what he's trying to do, then it's like a ping pong going back and forth. But you have to shut that border down. If it's a labor shortage, we already had illegals here. So I don't want to hear about that labor shortage. Okay, all these millions of people come here and stay here because we need them for labor. What labor? No, hire an American. So that's not an excuse. A labor shortage. You let these people come in here so that you could count their bodies so that you could have your politicians in that state a higher representation to be a Democrat. That was all politics because they couldn't vote. But even in California, they was trying to have them vote. But you have more bodies. That means you have more representation for your party. That's why they opened up the border. It wasn't because of some labor shortage. So
I wouldn't say a labor shortage. What I would say is that corporations like cheap labor. It doesn't mean there's a labor shortage. They want to pay people less. So whoever they can pay less is who they're going to take. That's typically how this works. So that's my point about that. And shutting down the border doesn't stop people from coming in. There are a lot of people in the country that are here because of overstayed visas.
Are you saying for them to keep it open?
No, I'm not saying for them to keep it open. But
Well,
that's
I
not
don't,
gonna
I don't
stop.
like. I've been talking about this border for the past 2 years, and I talk to other people. So when I'm telling you, when you look at New York, and I know people there, Chicago, and I was going to ask Pure to come on, but she went down to DC. You don't understand, if you ain't living in it, how these illegals coming in these cities that they claim sanctuary cities is ruining the city. They have no resources for the American people because it's literally going to the illegals. And it's talking about Black people, Black boys, Black girls. They're hurting the most. I'm not going to sit up here and put an illegal over a Black child. I'm just not, or an American child at that. I'm not going to do that. But when you have these liberal, wealthy cities, whether you in Massachusetts or in Connecticut somewhere, those illegals are not going nowhere near their cities. They're not having it, even though they want to say, oh, leave them alone. But you're not letting them in your homeless shelters there. So everybody is being
actually
this whole thing.
Well, actually, our governor did open up emergency shelters to illegal immigrants, and in fact, that's one of the big controversial things right now because she is backtracking on what she allowed to happen a year ago. So just
they shut down all those Black them rec centers and the Black community in Boston to put these illegals in there. So when them Black kids supposed to be playing their sports at, or where they supposed to go after school?
We talked. Listen, I had people from that neighborhood come onto the show and they talked about that. We had that conversation about that on the show. So I gotta watch the time because I know the Peltier.
Can I say something very quickly? Can I say
it's gotta be very quick, Jason, because I do have the kids.
I've heard this thing a lot brought up with immigration, and I want people to deeply understand the reason why we don't have nice things in this country is not because of illegal immigrants or sending money to all these other countries. I promise you, even if Trump solves illegal immigration tomorrow, we are not going to get benefits for Black people. We're not going to get education. We're not going to get healthcare. We have a system where the government just really kind of hates its own citizens and doesn't really prioritize its needs. And they want to make us vilify groups that make us feel like they're responsible for the reason that we don't have anything, when that's not really true. It's a government that refuses to provide for its own people. And when people get mad, they give them a scapegoat to get mad at. And it used to be Black people, now it's illegal immigrants. So
these are all really good points. So what I've learned so far from the panel is that it seems like we all agree when it comes to censorship that we're not for censorship, regardless if you're on the right or the left. And then also there was some agreement around healthcare, some agreement around labor, but not necessarily on raising the minimum wage. We definitely do not agree on immigration. But this has been, thank you so much for the discussion, you guys. I'm sorry I have to wrap this up in the way that I do, but I do have the Peltier kids coming. But thank you guys so much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having us.
It's great chatting with everyone. Good to meet you, Jason, Nora, and Dana.
Thank you.
Thank everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
All right, guys. Okay, interesting conversation there. Again, tonight's theme is echo chamber. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no echo chamber on this show. What I did think was interesting, like I said, we don't always agree. We didn't agree on everything, but all of us agreed on the censorship issue. So I think that's really important because there seems to be this narrative that only people on a certain side is censored, and that's not the case. Like I've heard people on the right say, oh, it's only us getting censored. I've heard people on the left say, no, it's only us getting censored, when people have been censored on both sides. So it's good that we're both against censorship. We all agree the healthcare system is a problem. There was an agreement across the board about universal healthcare, but we all agree that the healthcare system is a problem. We do not agree on immigration, apparently, ladies and gentlemen, but great conversation there, guys. I will get to the comments after I do. I want to do this story first because I don't want to run out of time before the Peltier kids come on. I do want to get into this Trump story, but I am going to get to the super chats, you guys. So, all right. Really quick, I do want to make sure I give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. I didn't forget about you, fam. I didn't forget about you. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies because they're just out there doing the damn thing, holding down the fort up in this piece. Hello. And of course, there are also members. Thank you guys so much for your support. You can see their names here, and also their names are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And I want to give a shout out to the new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Laura Noveline, Enoch Egbasoba. I am sorry if I butchered that, honey. Kelly Garrison and Michael Doyle. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all of you, fam. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our first news story. Start us off right, ladies and gentlemen, and smash that like. So, Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen, has signed a number of executive orders on his first day, a lot of them back to back to back to back. He's still signing executive orders. Most of them I do not agree with, but there are, I think, one or two, actually two. I think there's two of them that I do agree with. First and foremost, we're going to start with the Gaza situation. So you see Donald Trump is sitting here. APAC tracker is on it, by the way. He's sitting here just signing these executive orders. And the question of Gaza comes up. Everyone pay close attention to this.
Confident are you, Mr. President, that you can keep the ceasefire in Gaza and conclude the 3 phases of this deal?
I'm not confident. That's not our war, it's their war, but I'm not confident. But I think they're very weakened on the other side.
Do you support the 3 states?
Gaza, boy.
So did everybody hear what Donald Trump said? He said he's not confident about the ceasefire lasting. That's because we all know that Israel is going to continue to hit back. He's not confident about the ceasefire lasting. And then he goes on to say it's not our war. I kid you not. Listen to this.
I looked at a picture of Gaza. Gaza is like a massive demolition site. That place it's really got to be rebuilt in a different way.
Do you plan to help rebuilding Gaza?
I might. You know, Gaza is interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, best weather, you know, everything's good. It's like some beautiful things could be done with it, but it's very interesting. But some fantastic things could be done with Gaza.
How do you see the future in governance for Gaza?
Well, it depends. I can't imagine you could have, well, you certainly can't have the people that were there. Most of them are dead.
So did you hear that? You can't have the people who are there. Most of them are dead. He talks about the beachfront property. So this is the land grab, ladies and gentlemen. What have I been telling you since October 7th? Israel wants the land. Now, Donald Trump is there talking about rebuilding Gaza, but I think we all know what happens when you rebuild. We can just look around here in the United States and look at some of these neighborhoods that have been rebuilt. There is massive gentrification. If you look at some of these cities in DC, for example, Boston, right here where I am, you can see it in New York City. You can see it happening all over. Typically, when there is rebuilding, the residents who are already there are not going to be able to stay to enjoy what is rebuilt. They will be pushed out. So the Palestinian people in Gaza, those who are still alive, by the time this all comes around and gets settled, most likely they are going to be pushed out. They will become refugees again. Remember, a lot of them were refugees in the first place. That's how they got to Gaza. They came in as refugees. So this is the land grab. Now, for the people who told me, Tony said it here. Tony said, how serious are you guys about money out of politics? Because folks were saying that in 2024 and still voted for Kamala Harris. I agree with you, Tony. I didn't vote for Kamala or Donald Trump. I voted for Jill Stein. And that's one of the reasons, but not the only reason. Because the reality is, you see these politicians are bought and paid for, ladies and gentlemen. So you see what's happening. I said this before. Whether it was Trump or Kamala who would have won, this would have continued. Netanyahu would still try to get the land. I think that under Kamala, it probably would happen a lot slower. I think they were trying to drag it out quietly until the protests happened. But either way, they were all on Israel's side. Another thing that came up was TikTok, right? So signing the TikTok executive order, one of the questions that is posed to Donald Trump is, why did you try to ban it in 2020? Why did you consider banning it in 2020? Listen to this.
Long way. Oh, look at that. It says TikTok. My. What is that all about?
First, we have Alaska, sir. This is an executive order relating to unleashing Alaska's potential as an energy reservoir for the entire nation.
And what about Anwar?
I believe that would be included in aspects of the order.
So we're opening up N1.
On the TikTok piece, President Trump, you and your members of your team now used to warn about the dangers of TikTok spying on Americans. What changed that you're not worried about that anymore?
Well, it depends on the deal. I mean, I may not do the deal or I may do the deal. TikTok is worthless if I don't approve it. It has to close. I learned that from the people that own it. If I don't do the deal, it's worthless, worth nothing. If I do the deal, it's worth maybe $1 trillion, $1 trillion. So if I do the deal I'm talking about doing it for the United States. If I do the deal for the United States, then I think we should get half.
The TikTok CEO,
In other words, I think the U.S. should be entitled to get half of TikTok.
So this is the catch, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about money. So Donald Trump is saying that the U.S. should be able to get half of TikTok. So you see, there's always a catch. It's not just, I'm going to save this app. I'm going to do this just because it's the right thing to do. No, this was a business decision. And now you're seeing a possible business transaction. He's saying that TikTok can't survive without us.
And congratulations, TikTok has a good partner. And that would be worth, could be $500 billion or something. It's crazy. The numbers are crazy. But it's worthless if the president doesn't sign, then it's worthless. If the president does sign, it's worth maybe $1 trillion. So I think, like a joint venture, I think we would have a joint venture with the people from TikTok. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's one of many ideas I've had.
The CEO is now. Did he say that he's open to that idea?
Who?
The CEO of TikTok is around.
Oh, I think he'd probably like it. Because he's got nothing. I mean, they really have nothing. It's passed in Congress. It gives the president a right to make a deal or to close it. And we have 90 days to make that decision. But I could see making a deal where the U.S. gets 50% of TikTok, polices it a little bit or a lot.
Everybody hear this?
Depends on them.
Polices it a little bit or a lot. Does everybody hear this? So those of you who migrated to Red Note probably might want to still stay on Red Note, right? Like, I'm not getting too excited about trying to post on TikTok. I haven't posted on there in a long time anyway. But did you hear that? Police it a little bit. So don't think that just because it's back now, that there still isn't going to be that type of overreach. So this brings up that question again. If the U.S. gets half of TikTok, and the owner of TikTok was at President Trump's inauguration, by the way. So if the U.S. gets half of it, what does that really mean? So we could be still talking about some form of control.
But remember, they make telephones in China. They make all sorts of things in China. Nobody ever complains about that. Here they're complaining about this. There's so many different products made in China, and nobody ever complained about it. The only one they complain about is TikTok. And TikTok is largely young people. I guess I have a warm spot for TikTok that I didn't have originally. But, I went on TikTok, and I won young people up by 36%, Peter. And Republicans typically don't do too well with young people. But it's a different Republican Party.
Would the U.S. government buy a portion of TikTok then, or how would it get that 50%?
No, you'd take 50% of TikTok for the approval that TikTok could continue in business. And they'd have a great partner. The U.S. would be their partner. But the U.S. essentially would be paid for doing that half of the value of TikTok.
Would there be a private sector owner?
Could be, yeah, could be a lot. Tell you what, every rich person has called me about TikTok.
You wanted to block TikTok. Why did you change your mind?
Because I got to use it. And remember, TikTok is largely about kids, young kids. If China's going to get information about young kids, I don't know. I think, to be honest with you, I think we have bigger problems than that. But when you take a look at telephones that are made in China and all the other things that are made in China, military equipment made in China, TikTok, I think TikTok is not their biggest problem. But there's big value in TikTok if it gets approved. If it doesn't get approved, there's no value.
So you guys get the point here. So pay attention to what is being said there. Pay attention to what he's saying about There might police it a little bit. The US needs to get half of TikTok, because I want you to hold that, just keep that in your head. When we get to these executive orders, there's a couple I want to highlight here. Tracking Trump's executive orders, what he signed so far. So let's get into some of this. And he signed a lot. He signed a lot of them just on the first day. Immigration. So curtail immigration at the southern border. He promised mass deportations, but hasn't detailed how it would implement it. But it goes on to say here, he has declared a national emergency at the Mexico border. So that has already happened. He has also, it says here, he designed certain international, designated certain international cartels and organizations to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. He suspended the U.S. refugee admissions program. Everybody hear this? Nearly 1,600 Afghans cleared by the U.S. to resettle in the country, including family and active duty U.S. military personnel, had their flights canceled following Trump's orders. So some of this has already started to take place. I've seen videos on TikTok of people talking about how they're seeing ICE already start to move in and raid people. Now, this could be those raids that you see happening already right now. That could be people that already had like some type of, I don't know, some type of ticket or something like that. Might have been people that they were already looking for, right? But it's moving very quickly. Another one here, Remain in Mexico policy. Trump reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy, ending a program that released asylum seekers into the U.S. while their cases were considered. So they can't come into the U.S. while they're awaiting their case. So here's another one. This is the one that is going to be the most controversial when it comes to immigration, about whether or not this will actually get done. Trump birthright citizenship executive order. One of his boldest moves was to attempt to end birthright citizenship for those born to undocumented immigrants. I don't know how he's going to get this through the courts, because birthright citizenship is protected by the U.S. Constitution, and the order already faces legal challenges. So that's one, and that's a tricky one, you know, like ending the birthright citizenship. I don't see how that one gets through the courts, right? So I hear people talking about that already. That is going to have legal challenges. Another thing I want to push back on, some people on social media, they're saying, well, technically, wouldn't, you know, his children be considered under that birthright citizenship status because of Ivana? No, because he was a citizen. So it's not like he's not going to implement something that is going to hurt him. Okay. So let's get this together. Like, that's not going to happen there. It says it also applies to children born to mothers who were lawful temporary residents and the fathers who were not citizens or lawful permanent residents. So again, the birthright citizenship, I just don't see how that will get through the courts, being honest with you. Energy and environment executive orders. He declared a national energy emergency, ordering expedited, deregulated drilling, as well as he repeatedly vowed to drill, baby, drill. So again, not good for the environment. That being said, Joe Biden was already drilling as well. Remember Joe Biden, when he ran, he said no new drilling permits. Well, he totally went back on that when he approved the Willow Project. So I want to be very clear, because I have a pretty diverse audience here, but it's important that you understand that it's not that drilling wasn't happening under Biden. It was still happening. I think what was different is that Biden put a nicer face in front of it by saying that I'm not going to approve any more drilling permits, even though he did anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, behind closed doors, he still did it. Whereas Trump was more overt about it. Trump is probably going to allow more drilling than Biden, but at the same time, Biden was also allowing drilling as well. People need to acknowledge that. And I'm noticing a lot of Democrats are not acknowledging that. But that's a big one. The other one here, in a separate memorandum, he paused offshore wind leasing in federal waters. The Paris Climate Treaty, this is a big one. He's also signed an order withdrawing the U.S. from the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter, excuse me, from the Paris Climate Agreement. This one is bad. I think Donald Trump did this in 2016 as well. And then when Joe Biden won, he came back and he reinstated it. Now Trump is undoing this again. You know, these presidential elections, this country is just so petty sometimes, because it used to be that if you became president, in so many ways, you kind of had some type of respect for what the president did who came before you. There may be a couple things that you might reverse, but it wasn't like this back and forth thing. And I just see this country with being very unstable. And I don't think that's good for any of us. So I heavily disagree with that. Another one that he did here is the DEI. So let's look at this one. Executive orders targeting DEI and transgender Americans. Monday, he stated that the policy of the U.S. is to recognize two sexes, male and female, on official documents. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental. This is going to be very difficult because I don't know, man. I don't know how this is going to go over well. I don't know how this is, especially for people who may already have this one way on their documents. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But the DEI situation, something I want to mention to white women who may be watching. A lot of people are pointing to the DEI and they're saying, this is great, he's removing this. I have mixed opinions about the DEI stuff, mixed opinions. I've seen it kind of work okay, but I've also seen it work pretty poorly in workspaces. But I just want white women to know that this is going to affect you too. DEI doesn't just apply to Black people or Latino people. A lot of times people point to that and don't realize that when a lot of these workplaces started to say we are going to adapt a DEI agenda or DEI programs for hiring, etc., that also included white women. Same thing with affirmative action. I've said this over and over again. Affirmative action greatly benefited white women in the workplace. Not Thursday, but I think Friday night, I'm going to get into this when I talk about Gloria Steinem. We're going to do a deep dive about Gloria Steinem and how that feminist movement actually hurt the civil rights movement. We'll get into all that a little bit more deeper, and I'll explain to you how once that feminist movement started, that actually made it possible for white women to be included with affirmative action. We'll dive into all that on Friday, honey buns. All of that on Friday. I've always had mixed opinions about the DEI because, like I said, in the workplace, I've seen it work okay sometimes, but most of the times it didn't work out well. And I've seen DEI mainly benefit white women. So there's that as well. But we'll see how this is just oh my God, it's a lot happening. Other executive orders affecting federal workers. So Donald Trump is requiring that full-time federal workers have to be ordered back into the office. So if you were working from home, you now have to go back into the office. And what I want to say about that very quickly is I've always been a firm believer that if you can do your job at home, you should be able to do it at home, right? But what is happening is you have real estate that's attached to this. So when people were allowed to go work from home, you know, all these companies that invested in these buildings and these properties, they're just seeing their office spaces not go to use because they were empty. So now they're like, no, you got to come back. You got to come back in. So they're making them go back in. Again, I don't agree with that one either. Like I said, if you can do your job from home, you should be able to do it from home. Another one that I want to mention, I'm just trying to go through this is the big one too, the January 6 pardons. So Trump pardoned the vast majority of January 6 defendants charged with participating in the Capitol riot and commuted the sentences of 14 others. So there's a lot of criticism around this one. And my big thing is, as I said before, now just imagine if they were BLM rioters. Imagine if they were BLM protesters that showed up at the Capitol that way. Would they be pardoned? No, they would not be. The problem that I have with the way our presidents are using these pardons is that it's all partisan. It's all about what benefits them or what benefits their party. It's not even fair across the board anymore, with the exception of Leonard Peltier, which I do agree with that one. Well, he wasn't pardoned, he was commuted. Julian Assange. Well, Julian wasn't pardoned either. Anyway, you get the point that I'm talking about. They make it partisan, and I feel like it shouldn't be that way. So my thing is, again, like I said, would they have pardoned the BLM protesters? No. I mean, there were BLM protesters that went to jail, right? They're not pardoned. So there's that. And this is another big one, health executive orders. So a lot of people seem to be very happy about this one, that Donald Trump signed an order pulling the U.S. from the World Health Organization. So a lot of people that were very critical about the pandemic are very happy about that one, right? So the WHO, that's a big one. So I'm sure a lot of people who also supported RFK Jr. are probably happy about that one as well. This one, let's go to some more. TikTok extension, Doge, etc. Ensuring government agencies do not unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen, highlighting what Trump and his allies considered censorship under Biden. This is the one that I agree with. And I don't agree with Trump on much. That's the one I do agree with, is the censorship. I don't think the government should be involved with social media, telling these companies what they can have on their platforms, what they can't have, who they have to suppress, who they have to silence. Don't agree with that 100% at all. Now, here's something we need to think about. I noticed at his inauguration that, of course, Elon was there, right? So you have some of the tech people there. Mark Zuckerberg was also there. And my only question is, when you think back to what happened with Tulsi Gabbard, how she flip-flopped on surveillance, my big question is, now that Tulsi has changed her mind about the government being able to spy on the American people, what if the trade-off for us to get the free speech and to get the government out of these platforms, what if the trade-off is to allow these platforms to have more surveillance? Why did Tulsi Gabbard have to change her mind about how she felt about the U.S. spying on the people? Why did she have to change that in order to get that position to be sworn in? People need to start asking these questions, regardless of who you voted for. What is the trade-off? Again, I agree with this one. I agree with the censorship, 100% agree. But the collaboration here with Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and all the techie bros that were at the inauguration, I'm starting to wonder, what if this means that in return, we will have an increase of surveillance? And people just need to ask these questions. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, Sabs, just give them a pass on this one. Again, I agree with this one. But I'm also asking some damn questions. Another one here, ordering a review of trade practices and agreements, revoking security clearances for Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, and former intelligence officials who signed a letter discrediting the Hunter Biden laptop story. So Hunter Biden comes back into the picture again. Here we go. Formally establishing the Department of Government Efficiency, that's the Doge department, suspending the TikTok ban for 75 days. That's also pending some type of sale negotiation there. And then declaring that federal buildings should respect regional, traditional, and classical architectural heritage to beautify public spaces. So these are just a couple of things. Another thing that he did, he reversed that prescription cap that Biden administration put in place for prescriptions. So he reversed that. So people are going to have to pay more for their prescriptions now. I heavily don't agree with that. That's a problem. So for the people who said, oh, he's for working class, etc., working class people need to be able to get these prescription medications too. So these are the kind of things you need to point to. People are making memes already. This is crazy. I can't believe who came up with this stuff, man. Kamala Harris, I already told my husband on January 20th, 2025, he will sleep with the next president of the United States. And someone put a picture here of Donald Trump in a bathrobe. I don't even know who. Oh my God, my God, my God. So the other problem too that we're going to run into is Israel. He removed the sanctions that were implied on the West Bank. He removed those. That means this is Marion Adelson, I guess, venture. They're going to go all in the West Bank. There are already Palestinians in the West Bank, according to Dropshot News, that were stranded, that the gates were closed and they weren't able to get in. So people are just stranded on the roads. So here comes the West Bank project, which I warned you was going to happen. And I also think this still would have happened under Kamala Harris as well. Listen, Netanyahu was basically already given the green light to do these things. Do people not understand this? I see a lot of people on social media saying, well, this is what you guys get for not supporting Kamala Harris. I am seeing Democrats tell Palestinians that they hope that they burn. This is cult-like mentality, and we can't have that. So when I tell you no echo chamber, right? So we have all different types of views that are represented here. But what you have to understand is this was already in the works. People don't get this. Netanyahu already had this in the plan, the green light to go ahead and take over the West Bank. We talked about it last year. Last year, we talked about Israel decided to move forward with the expansion. So I don't know why people are trying to pretend like it's just now happening. We covered this last year. And pay very close attention. I will say this, guys. Pay close attention to the people who will have tears in their eyes during these deportations that didn't say a damn thing or care less about all these kids that were being blown up. Because that's how you know it's people looking out for their party and not looking out for the issue. Make sure you pay attention to the people who didn't want to protest during the Biden administration because they were Democrats and they said, just give them a chance while they continue to kill these kids in Gaza. Pay attention to those people to see if they have tears in their eyes if it happens under Trump's presidency, which I think it will continue to happen. That's how you know it's partisan and it's not really about the issue. These are things I pay attention to. We took a look back here to see how many executive orders have been implemented over time. When we look at Joe Biden's presidency of 2021, Joe Biden signed 77 executive orders. Donald Trump is headed to 200, right? But on the first day, and this is the part that I think is ever so telling, how many did Biden sign on the very first day of his presidency? So if we go back to that first day, you'll see 1, this is January 20th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we go to the 21st. On Joe Biden's first day, he signed 9. Donald Trump is already at 200-ish. So the thing that Donald Trump is showing you is what the president can do. To this point, it almost kind of sounds like the Democratic Party, they're conservative when it comes to strategy. They were conservative when it came to Kamala's campaign. Let's lean in with Liz Cheney. Let's not rock the boat too much. Rock the boat, baby. Rock the boat. They were conservative with that. Why did Joe Biden only sign 9 on the first day? Think about all the things he could have signed into law. Donald Trump's out here signing executive orders left and right, fam. Left and right. Bam, 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 bam. Joe Biden signed 9. Let's go back and look at something else, actually. We'll just go up here. I love this link because you can find so much more on here. If we go to, make this a little bit smaller. Let's go to another president. If we go to Barack Obama, 2009, Obama signed 40 executive orders in 2009. You see how conservative the Democratic Party was? 40. On the first day, and I'm thinking of all the things that Barack Obama could have signed, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where are we? 9. Okay. Barack Obama, 9. Just like Joe Biden. Interesting. On the very first day. Now, Roger Meadows wanted me to look at FDR. Because I think what is happening here, it's like the Democratic Party tries their best not to upset Republicans so much that they end up moving conservatively in certain ways. So let's go to FDR, 1937. FDR signed, everyone see this. Let me make this bigger. Peep this, fam. FDR signed 256 executive orders. 256 executive orders. So when you hear people say that Joe Biden's the most progressive since FDR, no, that would probably be LBJ. Because under LBJ, didn't we also get, that was when you received the federal student loans? Think about some of those things that happened. How did they skip over LBJ? So the point that I'm trying to show you is that Donald Trump has continued to show you what can be done in the short amount of time that it can be done. And then also on top of that, another thing that you'll see is look at what FDR did. FDR did something closer to what Donald Trump is doing right now. So what has happened is that the Democratic Party, like I told you, has moved further to the right. Because over the years, they've decided to become more conservative about how they do these executive orders and just policy in general. And this is how someone like Donald Trump can come in and win. We're still a very divided country. You can see it in this video here from Status Quo. In the humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. Look at this. This is how divided we are.
In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. A fascist America. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. Lock it up. Of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. In the name of humanity.
I wish people came together like this to fight against the billionaire class. I wish people did that. You know, so you see what's happening? Everybody's divided over left versus right, but people are not divided over the billionaires. Like everybody needs to come together over the billionaire class. So I think what you're starting to see, and this is a big part of it, is that people are sitting back and they're saying, how is it that Donald Trump can just walk in there and sign all these orders? Well, FDR did too. The Democratic Party changed. That's just the reality of the situation. So I think the best thing for them to do is to, number one, they need to stop being so conservative. Because you don't see Trump trying to be more left. Just something to think about. Something to think about. Okay, I think that Joey is here. We'll bring in Joey, and then after Joey, we're going to do the Obama story. But I do want to start with this here. Probably the best news that we received this week so far is this one. Biden commutes life sentence of Leonard Peltier, Native American activist, in prison for almost 50 years. This is probably the best news we've heard so far this week. And of course, this is a picture here of Leonard Peltier. I think Leonard Peltier should be pardoned. That would be great, a full pardon. But he is going to get to come home. And joining me now are the Peltier kids, Joey and Gina. Hello.
Anim Boujou.
Bonjour, everyone. Sabby, thank you so much for having us on tonight.
Thanks so much for coming back on. So I was so excited when I heard the news. At first, I didn't think it was true, so I had to double check. But this is amazing news, you guys.
Yes, it is. I'm so excited. And, you know, quite honestly, like, I just have to give a big shout out to all of our communities, all of our prayers, all of our hard work, all of our organizing has really paid off. But the hard work is not over. Trust me. And I think we all know that.
Well said. Go ahead, Joey.
Miigwech to Jane Roach, Indian Collective, Amnesty International, more than 120 tribal leaders, including the National Congress of American Indians, President Mark McConnell. They all wrote a letter to President Biden within the last couple of weeks, urging him to grant clemency. And today is the day. I heard that he was going home today.
Oh my gosh. I'm so happy about this. And for those who are not aware, can we just explain to people, because, you know, everyone may not be familiar with the story, why Leonard Peltier was in prison we refer to him as a political prisoner, why he was in prison to begin with?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. And so the American Indian movement started in the 1960s and it really took off. And so in 1973, there was a call out to the American Indian movement from the Pine Ridge Reservation and those tribal members, because that tribal government became completely corrupt. And later on, it showed that most of the majority of the violence and the crime that was happening on the reservation was by the local tribal government. And so American Indian movement showed up to Pine Ridge to help. They brought resources, they brought food, they brought culture back, they brought a sense of community back. But at the same time, with the corrupt tribal government, they allowed for U.S. government to come in. And so the feds came in and they just started this campaign of brutalization. You know, basically the United States government and the Federal Bureau of Affairs, the FBI, they were involved in a counterintelligence war to shut down the American Indian movement. And so in 1975, it got really, really bad where the federal agents were just completely unleashing terror. And of course, you know, we have every right to defend ourselves. And so there happened to be a shootout. And so a bit after the shootout, two federal agents were killed. And so there was this big investigation happening. The two other defendants that were also tried with Leonard were let go on self-defense charges. But with Leonard's case, he is such a powerful voice for our people. He was bringing the culture back. He was a big supporter of the Freedom Religion Act. You know, United States government was supposedly founded on the freedom of religion, and the indigenous people of this beautiful land weren't even allowed to practice our ceremonies or even speak our languages. And so since Leonard was such a huge activist for our communities, they targeted him. And so Leonard, he did run to Canada, and the United States government illegally extradited him, brought him back to Fargo, North Dakota, where he was tried, found guilty, and then locked up. A few decades later, the original judge who tried Leonard Peltier came out and said that he was unjustly tried and that he should not be in jail. And ever since he was locked up, we've been continuing to advocate for his freedom. He was a political prisoner. They did lock him up to intimidate us, you know, and as testament throughout the years and the decades, and then with what happened at Standing Rock, it didn't intimidate us. It just fueled our fire.
Well said there, Gina. And I think this is a story a lot of people need to hear about. There are a number of, I know we talked about Julian Assange a lot on the show, but there are a number of political prisoners that should be pardoned. Now, his sentence was commuted. I want to bring this up here for people to see as well. It says that in a statement, the White House said, the commutation will enable Peltier to spend his remaining days in home confinement, but he will not pardon him for his underlying crimes. This is a part I think a lot of people may have been puzzled by. Why not the pardon? Like, why is they're bringing him home, but they won't pardon Leonard Peltier?
Exactly, especially after they have evidence that he did not kill those federal agents. So it's really concerning too. You know, we're on high alert. Is he going to make it home? Are there going to be people who are going to retaliate? And then there's his health. He's 80 years old. He's blind in one of his eyes. He's got diabetes, and he has not had access to the right health care that he needs. And so there's all these things that are in play that concern us. I really feel, you know, it was just kind of like a ploy to kind of deter us and not focus on what was happening within the current administration. There's so many bad things that the Trump administration is enacting, and you've been going through that with on your show. And thank you so much for laying that all out for us. But even here in the state of Minnesota, they just introduced House Bill 7, which makes it a felony to trespass on critical infrastructure. It also makes it a felony if you educate anyone who does trespass on critical infrastructure. And not only that, Sabrina, what's super concerning also is that they want to make a database of all the people who are arrested for trespassing on critical infrastructure. So could you imagine there being a public database for everyone who was arrested for supporting Black Lives Matter, or everyone who was arrested for resisting Dakota Access Pipeline, or the over 1,000 arrests for Line 3, to have a public searchable database that anyone can go to, pull up our picture, pull up our name, pull up our date of birth, and pull up our addresses, you know? And that's not just happening in Minnesota. And so there's so many things going on that, you know, yes, we should celebrate, but we should also use this moment to unite and educate and to continue to fight for what we truly need.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it seems like, of course, going after protesters and something we've been very concerned about. And we saw some of this in Atlanta, right? Like they were going after protesters there. It's crazy, crazy times. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is last year, I believe he was up for parole, but he was denied parole. What was the reason for the denial?
There was too much support against him being released. You even had the Attorney General of North Dakota show up and testify against his release, saying that he was a threat to the communities. And go ahead, Joey.
It was the district attorney, Biden appointed district attorney, Max Snyder.
So it was the DA that Joe Biden appointed?
Correct. And I've actually worked with this man. He's been a part of the DemMPL, the Democrat Party of North Dakota, for a good long time. And we've engaged numerous times. Part of me thought about, like, is it because of the resistance that my sister and I have done that targeted Leonard Peltier as they did? And, you know, having him being released on this partial clemency house arrest, it eases my mind a bit, but that's still in the background. And that's what the reason why we consider him a political prisoner is because, you know, it was meant to shut us down. It was meant to scare us. It was meant to make sure that, you know, in the back of our heads, we are in fear that we're going to be just like Leonard in prison the rest of our lives. Gina amazingly, she faced an FBI charge back in 2022 for holding space, or 21 for holding space at the DOI, which is something that the original Aimsters did with, what was it, 13 tribal nations represented in back in 21. The original 13 tribes were represented. And they held it for 3 hours in 21, but back in the 70s, they held it for 3 months.
Interesting. Very interesting. What happens from here? I know that he's going home. Did they say what day he's going to be released?
Today. He's
Okay.
headed home today, and he wants some cow tongue when he gets home. Oh, well, that's what Kathy had posted earlier today, and they're getting ready for him over in the Pine Ridge Reservation. Indian Collective has set up a transition type of system for him, so he is being taken care of, and there will be a transitional period where, reintegration within the community.
Yeah, that's what I was.
We're praying and hoping he has decades left on his life to enjoy his family.
Yeah, I know, because it's been so long. So when you're gone for that amount of time, it can be, very difficult trying to assimilate again back into community, even though you were from the community. And so I'm glad to hear like he will have a team there around him to help him get back into the swing of things. And then on top of that, are you two going to see him anytime soon, or? Yeah.
Like Joey said, Pine Ridge is welcoming home, but he is also from Turtle Mountain Reservation up in North Dakota, and they're planning a huge celebration for him. So I'm hoping once they release the details on that, anyone who can make it can show up in celebration and in solidarity of his release.
That is awesome. So let me ask some questions around this, because I think this is where some people may get a little bit confused. So he's to serve out the rest of his sentence at home. What does that really mean? Like, are they putting any type of restrictions on him? Like, for example, like, can he travel freely?
Exactly. And I'm not sure necessarily, and I'm not sure anybody else right now is sure of the details, but it does state like he is on house arrest. So right now we're just assuming whatever it is that they have him on house arrest. But I'm sure working with the officials and the parolees and whatnot, there can and should be some exceptions, because quite honestly, he should be free, so it's just, but then again, the indigenous community is, if he can't come to us, we'll go to him.
Yes, this is so, have the two of you had a chance to speak with him?
No, not yet.
Nice.
Yeah.
And tell everybody. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, he's been so busy getting released and speaking with everyone else that we just don't want to take up time yet, because we have so much to talk about. So it's just like, he knows we're supportive, and we're waiting for that day that we can actually have a sit down chat with him, and something that's not rushed through or anything like that.
Are you going to try to do any type of pardon? Try to see if there could be a pardon under Donald Trump?
We are going to move forward. Go ahead, Joey.
Gina, I think we should consult the family on that answer, actually. Let them figure out, afterwards what the game plan is going to be. I've talked to Jane a little bit, and we're keeping update with the rest of the family and what's being released. So we are a little bit restricted on what's being said, because Leonard is just being released, and that game plan has to be developed before it can be actually open to the public. Also, have to be ran through some legal different things, and honestly, if he's up for that battle, because he might just be comfortable sitting at home with his grandbabies and, living out the rest of his years just comfortable.
That's right. That's right. I think the people, for those of you, again, who are not aware, And Eric, you can put the link to this article in the chat as well. We're discussing Biden commutes life sentence of Leonard Peltier, Native American activist in prison for almost 50 years. I was surprised with the headline. They referred to him as Native American activist and not like, you know what I mean? You know how sometimes corporate media can be. But Leonard Peltier will be coming home, which I think is really good news. This is another one we've talked about. Of course, Julian Assange. We've talked about Mumia. We've talked about, and by the way, people were asking about this. The president cannot pardon Mumia, and I think that has to do with his. If I remember correctly, I think he was charged by the state, so I don't think a president can pardon him, from what I understand correctly. But this is really big news. Could you guys explain to everybody again your relation to him? Because I know it's been a while since you guys were on before, but if you could just explain to people who are newer.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Joy.
So he's our father's cousin. So he's our great uncle. And it's been it's been a challenge. Gina and I have lived off the Turtle Mountain Reservation, a good 4 hours away from it, in a little small rural town, and connecting with our family, making sure that they know what we're doing and making sure that we run through everything with them. And it's been a good process, and we've been pushing Leonard most of our lives, and living as a Peltier, we've had to face those racisms within our own small little rural town of Grafton, North Dakota, and in our schools, and when we engage in the wider world. Gina herself goes by her married name. I hyphenate my married name, so it's just a bit. And I personally have my husband, who has that white name, contact our landlords or our rental agencies and whatnot, just to make sure that we can be able to, access common day things. Yeah. I remember just recently having him to go into a hotel so they wouldn't deny us.
Wow. Yeah, these are some of the things that come along with that. Well, I'm so happy for both of you, and of course, for Leonard Peltier. I got to tell you, when I heard this news, I was not expecting to hear this news this week at all. Like, I was shocked. I was like, what?
It came out of the blue. I was about to go into the AME church here in DC for Reverend Al Sharpton's rally for MLK Day, and my friend reached out to me saying, "Hey, did you know this happened?" And I broke down. I'm sure there was reporters out there, and they got me snot and all, huddled with my family around me. And yeah, I had to catch myself, call Gina, give her the good news. And she was in a meeting with the Rise and Repair Coalition on the rights of Manuman. And wow,
I didn't believe
it was a shock.
I didn't believe him. I had to take myself on mute. I was like, my brother Joey has something good to say. Listen to him. And then he told them, everyone who was in the meeting I was with, and then they were hooting and hollering. And it was just like, it was an unbelievable moment. And for me, it really did take a few seconds to sit in. But even after that, I was a crying mess, and I'm not someone who cries so easily. So it's a very happy moment. But at the same time, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and there's still many concerns that are up in the air.
I hear you. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks to both of you for coming on. And I wish you all the best of luck. Again, this is the biggest news so far of 2025. So it was a good way to start off the year. That's for sure.
Yes, Sabrina, thank you so much for your coverage of not only this, but everything else. Like, it just, listening to you, for me personally, just kind of gives me a little sanity to know, like, I'm not the only one out there who thinks the same way. So huge shout out for covering everything that you do.
Thank you so much.
Chimiguj, and I'll probably see everyone in the call-in after the show if there's one going on.
Yep.
There is call-in tonight. There is. Thanks,
don't
guys.
forget to drink your water, everyone. Drink it while you can.
Gigawagam Minawa.
Thanks, Sabby.
Thank you. All right, guys. Awesome. I know. Love Inspector Peltiers. That's right. I know. I'm so excited. This is like great news. Leonard Peltier coming home, because when they denied the parole, I was like, oh man, it's never gonna happen. Right. That's what I was starting to think. But he's coming home. So that's good. All right, guys. We have one more story. We are going to do call-in tonight, but I have one more story, and that is the Obama story, the Obama's story. So I do want to get into that. So peep this, fam. Something is rotten in Denmark. Something's a little bit rotten in Denmark. And we can get into the echo chamber part about this as well, because you see, we noticed during the Jimmy Carter funeral, Obama show up alone. Remember this? Just speeding up a little bit here, but he comes in right about here. You making sure I'm at the right spot. So remember, Jimmy Carter's funeral, there was Obama right there, right? Everybody else was with their spouse, was there with them. Obama's there. You can see Pence and Al Gore is still around, hanging out and all that jazz. But anywho, everybody was there with their spouse. Kamala eventually shows up as well with, of course, with Doug. But one of the things that people said was, where's Michelle? Where was Michelle? Now, some of the things that I read said that she was already had plans, right? So that's why she wasn't there. But it's still weird. We are used to seeing the Obamas as a united front, right? They're usually together. And it's not like this was Trump's inauguration. This was Jimmy Carter's funeral. And Michelle wasn't there. And then, of course, we know what happens from there about Donald Trump and Barack Obama laughed their little, butts off. And I told you it's one big club, right? Then there was Trump's inauguration. And Obama was present here as well. But once again, people are asking, where is Michelle?
So you'll see the 42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William J. Clinton, accompanied by the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton.
So you'll see here's Hill and Bill. They're together, right? Of course, you'll see there's Miriam Adamson right there, right? Okay, but you can see they're together with each other. Everybody seemed to have their significant other there. And then we fast forward. And then we can see here.
For her 8 years ago during this very moment.
She said it took years to get over how close that loss was. You saw her reach over and shake Susie Wiles' hand. Susie Wiles, right there in center frame. Of course, she will make history as chief of staff.
So I think now Obama enters.
The United States, the Honorable George.
Oh, no, that's George. So George enters. And then, okay, so again, George is there with his spouse. So now you've seen everyone enter with their spouse. So it was kind of weird, like when Barack Obama enters, once again, alone. You'll see it here.
Interested in getting involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 44th President of the United States, the Honorable Barack H. Obama.
Mary Jordan, Barack Obama, being applauded by that room as he walks by, and all these different relationships.
By himself. You know, at this point, he's like Jason Derulo. Jason Derulo. And he's riding solo. Remember Jason Derulo has a song, I'm riding solo, I'm riding solo. So he's riding solo, right? Once again. Now, Michelle Obama had very strong feelings against Donald Trump. So I guess Michelle said this time around she could not put on the face. She was there for Trump's 2016 presidential inauguration. She was not there for this one. And I think this time around she just said, I can't do it. Okay, cool, fine. But why isn't Obama standing by Michelle? Because like typically at this point, like again, we are used to seeing them as a unit at these types of events. So Jimmy Carter's funeral, she's not there. She said she had other plans. Why wasn't Barack with Michelle? Right? Everybody keeps saying, where is Michelle? Why isn't she there? But the question should be also, why isn't Barack with Michelle? Right? It was also just her birthday recently. And I think he posted a picture and said, look, we're not getting divorced. We're together. Everything's okay. See? What is happening here? And then we go on to this too. And there was something else weird. Here's Obama in DC, just partying it up, chilling again without Michelle. Like it's just, so it says Barack Obama was seen celebrating inauguration weekend in Washington, D.C. without Michelle Obama. And they're saying about the ongoing divorce rumors. Now, the Obamas have debunked that there is no divorce happening. The former president attended a private dinner in a secluded room accompanied by an unidentified woman. What is happening here? So what's happening? Why? So that's him right there going up the stairs. There he is. Why is he there? Where's, again, doesn't this seem a little weird to you guys? So let's get into a little bit more here because Daily Mail, you know, they dove into this, right? Michelle Obama shares statement as husband Barack attends inauguration without her amid divorce rumors. So what is going on in this mofo? Former First Lady Michelle Obama shared a statement honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. while her husband, former President Barack Obama, attended Donald Trump's inauguration alone. Amid rumors they might be getting a divorce. Again, he has debunked that. The 44th president of the United States donned a black suit, striped tie, and then smiled and waved at reporters as he walked into the Capitol. He entered the rotunda on his own. We just showed that video. Obama did not attend pre-inauguration prayer services at St. John Episcopal's Church and is not set to attend Trump's inaugural luncheon. Meanwhile, Michelle Obama shared an Instagram post, is always Instagram, honoring MLK Jr. on the national holiday marking his birthday without acknowledging Inauguration Day. And I said this before too, I didn't understand why the presidential inauguration needs to be on MLK Day, right? I thought that was not cool, you know? Reverend Dr. MLK legacy of service always inspires me. This is her statement. MLK Day, I hope you'll join me. And when we all vote in honoring Dr. King's life and legacy by getting involved in your community, by getting involved in your community. And I just want to highlight that part right there because yes, there's, you know, with MLK Day, you can get involved with your community, but it almost to me it seems like Michelle might've been trying to send a message that like get involved in your community because this politics shit ain't happening. And that's what I was thinking about. Get involved in your community because we don't know what's up and coming. Get involved in your community because the Democrats lost. Trump won the popular vote. This country has moved further to the right. Get involved in your community. Almost as if she's trying to tell them to do something else and not to put their hopes in an electoral system that is fundamentally fixed for the most part by billionaire money, corporations, and the military industrial complex. Whether you're mentoring students at your local school or volunteering for a cause that matters to you, it all helps to make a difference. Tell me how you're giving back today in the comments. Now, when Michelle Obama, like when Barack Obama was in the White House, Michelle Obama was really big on like getting kids involved in fitness. Does everybody remember this? Like that was kind of her thing, like eating healthy, teaching the kids how to eat healthy, get involved in fitness, get up, get active and move. Does everybody remember those things? That was kind of like her big thing. But she seemed to be really big into like, giving back and that kind of thing. But nothing political, like in her statement, just get involved in your community and tell me how you're giving back today. Trump started his second inauguration surrounded by tech titans and media moguls. And you'll see here's Barack Obama here. Does Obama look happy to you? Does Obama look happy? This is the second public event that he was at without Michelle. He was riding solo, just like Jason Derulo. And it makes you wonder what is happening there. So I have a little bit of an idea, I think, and I want to dive into that a little bit. You tell me what you think about this. I think that after Kamala lost the presidential election, something changed for Michelle. And I think she just couldn't bring herself to do it anymore. I think she probably was just like, I just need a vacation. I think at one point she was in Hawaii. I just need to get away from all of this. I don't want to deal with this right now. And sometimes there comes a time where you can't put on a face anymore. You just can't do it, right? So does that mean Obama's been putting on a face all this time? Because why isn't Obama there with his wife? So that brings up another question, which is that, is it that Obama cares more about being a part of those social circles so much to the extent that he's going to go regardless if his wife really wants him to? And no, she may not have said publicly that she didn't want him to, but as a woman, guys, listen up. As a woman, even if we don't say that we don't want you to go, but we express that we have no desire to go, we don't want you to go. Ladies in the chat, tell the guys, even if we don't tell you not to go, if we tell you that we have no desire to go, I don't want to go sit around that man. I don't want to go be around that guy. I don't want to deal with him anymore. Well, Michelle, okay. You want me to go? You want me to stay home? You can do whatever you want to do, but I have no desire to go. Okay, guys, this is a trick. I'm giving a tip here to the men. That is a trick. We don't want you to go, but we don't want to tell you not to go. We want you to just pick up on it that you should be with us. You should stay with us. You shouldn't want to go. Obama went. So he didn't pick up on that. So my whole thing is that for all the people in the media who are pointing fingers at Michelle Obama and asking, why wasn't she standing by her husband? And people are saying these things. Why wasn't she standing by her husband? Why aren't they asking Obama why he wasn't standing by his wife? Question that we need to ask. And I think it's because Obama wants to remain in those social circles. He knows how it looks if he doesn't show up, right? But what he didn't realize, or maybe he did, even though he showed up, the fact that she wasn't there, that's going to raise questions and red flags as well. I know, Kyle. I know. Men are done playing mind games. I know. I'm just giving you a tip. Just giving you a tip. So no, by himself, riding solo. Even in this picture here, look at the expression on his face. He knows what they're thinking. Bill and Hill, George, and I always forget George Bush's wife's name. I'm sorry. But all of them sitting around him, he knows what they're thinking. Oh, Michelle wasn't feeling too well. Not doing too well. Oh, Laura Bush. That's her name. Thanks, Eric. She wasn't feeling too well, but I'm here. I'm here, guys. So this speaks volumes. And people don't really know, it says here, Michelle Obama was notably absent, fueling already simmering rumors that the couple may be splitting up. The former president was seen enjoying a meal in D.C. over the weekend without Michelle. Barack Obama appeared very happy as he attended a dinner party at Osteria Moza on Saturday night with a small group of Washington insiders. So he was with a group of Washington insiders. In recent weeks, his wife also skipped out on Jimmy Carter's memorial service, citing a scheduling conflict. She's always been very deliberate about where and who she shows and how she shows up, an insider told Page 6. She showed up reluctantly for the election. They were united, but she doesn't have to unify around Trump. Her absence speaks volumes. And it does. And so that, again, that brings up the question, why did Obama feel that he had to be there? So what I will say is this. I will say that in this particular situation, it almost looks like Michelle was being true to herself and how she felt, and Obama was the one putting on a show. I don't know if the divorce rumors are true or not. Again, I've heard these kind of things before, and a lot of times it's just a myth. But when we talk about echo chambers, I think it's important for people to understand that it seems like, obviously, like for this show, I tell you guys, this is not an echo chamber. You'll hear people come on with different points of view. At the same time, everybody has red lines, right? Seems like for Michelle, that was her red line. And one of the things I've been wondering for a long time about Barack, it seems like he don't really have red lines. Like he'll get out on the campaign trail and tell everybody to support the Democrat candidate, just like he did for Hillary too. And for Biden, he did that for Kamala as well. But in the end, when Hillary lost and Trump won, and this time when Kamala lost and Trump won, Obama was sitting at Jimmy Carter's funeral laughing and giggling with Donald Trump. So does Obama really have red lines? It makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. But these are the kind of things that people are pointing to, ladies and gentlemen. And I think it also says something else about the Democratic Party. Part of me wonders if there may be a little bit of embarrassment there for Michelle, because she got out there at the Democratic National Convention. She gave like a big speech. Honestly, when Michelle was speaking, people were like, she probably should have been the one that was running for president. And I said this on Rising 2 years ago. I said, if Michelle Obama ran, she could probably win. But she gave a powerful speech at the Democratic National Convention. And then to see that Donald Trump managed to win again after losing in 2020, there could be a little bit of embarrassment there about like, What is wrong with the Democratic Party? What happened to the Democratic Party? And I said before, again, you guys lost the working class. You have to do something for the people. And eventually times became so dire that people were like, I can't do this anymore. 8 million people stayed home. 8 million people stayed home, guys. People were pointing their fingers at people like me who voted for Jill Stein. I told you I'm not voting for either one of them who voted for Jill Stein. But there's 8 million people who stayed home that came out and supported Joe Biden in 2020 that said, I can't do it this time around. So that says something itself about the party. And that brings me to this comment here. Paul Knox. He said the Democratic Party needs to go the way of the Whigs. They have no identity, no purpose, no convictions. They've become useless and dangerous. He also goes on to say that Bill Clinton finally drove them right into the ditch. They are opportunistic lobbyist facilitators. Everything gets run by them first, repeat over decades. So I think Paul brings up a really good point here. What are the convictions? What is the purpose? Because if you told me to point to Bernie Sanders and say, what was his conviction? What was Medicare for all? There are others, but right off the top of my head, boom, Medicare for all. That's like Bernie's big thing. I can't say that about the Democratic Party as a whole. I don't know what the convictions are of the Democratic Party. Now, here's the thing. You tell me what are the convictions of the Republican Party. I can tell you. I'm like, well, they don't want the DEI thing. They don't want that. They don't want... most of them now don't want the wars. They don't want, like, I can point to different things, may not agree with it, but I can point to it. What does the Democratic Party stand for anymore? And maybe part of that could have to do with why Michelle decided to stay home or in Hawaii and not to appear. Maybe it was the thought of her saying, I can't believe we have to do this again. What happened? And I think instead of the Democratic Party pointing fingers and saying it's sexism, it's racism. Yes, there is some of that. Some people flat out are not going to vote for a woman. Some people flat out like, I'm not going to vote for her because she's a woman of color. Yeah, some people are like that, but that's not everybody. Those 8 million people that voted for Joe Biden, why didn't they show up to vote for Kamala Harris this time around? Because they were disappointed with the party. So they felt like neither one of these parties really represent them. So they stayed home. And I think some people would say it's embarrassing that she wasn't there, but it also kind of seems like she couldn't put on a face this time. Something to think about, folks. Something to think about. So when we talk about echo chambers, that's just something I want you to keep in mind, that when you do get out of those echo chambers, that does mean that you're going to hear some things that you may not be okay with. As long as you have a red line, you should be able to navigate those spaces. But I think a big part of it is that when you exist in an echo chamber and you've been there for so long, you don't know how to navigate different spaces, or you don't want to. And that happens on both sides. There was a guy on Breaking Points, and he was talking about that a lot of Americans are incredibly lonely because they spend more time online instead of talking to people face to face and hanging out with people in person like we used to do back in the day. I think there could be some truth to that, because back in the day, we had to interact with people face to face that may not have had the same political views as us. Before Facebook, before Twitter, before all of this social media, before online gaming, all of that, we had to work with people face to face that had different political views than us. And that's just how it was. Can we blame social media? Maybe a little bit. But I think you start by talking to people again. I think that's the big part. Reaching across the aisle, talking to people again. You should still have a red line. You should still have a red line, but I think that you would start there. My goal is just to get people out of echo chambers. So you ask for yourself, do you think there's an echo chamber there with the Obamas? All right. I don't even think I told people to do this tonight. Go ahead and smash the like button, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. That helps me out. And we are going to do call in tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break. Eric's going to come on. Eric, I'm so sorry, but we do have a lot of super chats. I'm so sorry I got behind.
We'll deal with them.
All right.
We'll figure it out. And while we're doing it, we will not be in echo chamber. All right. This is the part of the show where our Sabby takes a little break. And then we'll be when she'll come back for a few more words. And then we'll transition over to the Zoom call-in, formerly known as Hangout. We'll be giving you the link then. It's actually Sabrina actually creates the Zoom Hangout. So it actually doesn't even exist yet, but it will shortly. And we'll give you the link. And we'll be taking it from there. We got a lot of super chats and paid chats hangout built up, and I promise you we will be reading those through. Let me check here. Check the message. And yeah, but just right before we get to those, I just wanted to highlight one thing very quickly here. There's a new thing for 11 Demands, the 11 Demands Substack. And I put a post up on it today that I wanted to just highlight briefly here. Where is it? Here we go. So this is off the 11 Demand Substacks, which I'm saying if you want to, if you think that it's a good idea and a good concept, please do sign up to the Substack. It's all completely free and whatnot, and you'll get occasional posts and updates, and we'll see where it goes. You know, but that's where it's at right now. All right, so this one today is MCDS versus Trump. It's an MCDS analysis of the Trump inauguration, right? And you know, and we start off with this picture, you know, really kind of a famous picture, like this, even a little larger, of Trump's wedding and the Clintons, and they're all yucking it up. You know, we say they're all friends, right? Now, they're all friends with each other, but they're not our friends. We see it in this photo above from Trump's wedding. And then more recently, you know, and like we were just showing on, oh, don't give me that. I agree, just showing at Jimmy Carter's funeral, you have Obama and the supposed Hitler, Trump yucking it up. And so we see it, you know, at the funeral. Now we see it at Trump's inauguration. And we see, you know, who their real friends are, or more precisely, we see who their bosses are, the billionaires. We got Zuckerberg making quite a face, Bezos, Elon Musk. I think you got the dude from Microsoft there as well. And so let's do an analysis using the old MCDS framework and money, corruption, demands, and solutions. So we got the M, right? There are two sets of interests. There's the interests of the top 0.1% and the interests of the 99%. It's one of the critical things just to realize in all this is that every current member of Congress and the president are working in the interests of that top 0.1% of the money. And none of them, no member of the uniparty of either party in Congress are our friends. We got the C. And why are they doing that? Because they are paid to do that. They are corrupt. It is truly that simple. They're wearing different colored uniforms, but they're really on the same team. And that's Team Billionaire. That's not on our team. But then it's also crucial to get to the D, that we don't stop there, but we move to the next step. You know, we need to be demanding an end to it. We need to say this corruption, you know, needs to stop. We need to form a mass movement based on a specific list of demands, with fixing the big money corruption at the top of the list. And the demands flow into the solutions, right? Where we see the root cause is clear. The billionaires and the mega corporations own our government. And so then we go into the solutions, right? The solutions are at the top of the list of 11 demands, starting with You need laws and ballot measures for clean elections and public financing of campaigns. We need to be enacting a constitution to fix this core problem. Corporations are not people. Money is not speech is what we need to have clarified. And there's, of course, there's the list of 11 demands that goes on from there. And, I close it with saying it doesn't have to be this way. When the 99% come together and demand that our government represent our interests, real change can happen and a better world is possible. So I'm going to put, I'll put the link to this article into the Substack in the chat. Like I said, I encourage everyone to sign, to join it like you do on Substack. These Substack things, it's let's get into it. Here we go. And there's already a few other articles on it, and you'll get an email once in a while that hopefully you'll be interested in. Okay, that's the new 11 Demands Substack. Let me get that off of here. And let's go into some of these super chats. And I'll just remind you people again, this is Sabby's on a little break. She'll be back in here shortly. And then we'll be transferring over into the Zoom Hangout. I think people may have some things to say about the show tonight, especially that panel, but we'll save it for the Substack. Thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows. He says, we are or some already have quality government health care. It's called TRICARE. Extend it to everyone. Call it TRICARE for all. Yeah, I mean, these things are possible, and there are examples of it. And, one of the tricks that people who don't want real progress or people really working for the billionaires, one of the tricks they do is say, oh, it's hard, oh, it's complicated. And, these things are possible. Like, as a people, we can do these things. But the first, you have to start with being not corrupt, put it that way. Thanks for this super chat, Satra. And she says, 334 million USA citizens, let's say 150 million citizens pay $10 a month for Medicare. That total is 1.5 billion a month. We can pay for Medicare for all because the US already takes more than $10 out of our check. And, I think that's an example of just how the resources are there. And there we go. Thanks for this one, Unemployed Scholar. Rights can be taken away. Necessity is good framing, good phrasing. Yeah, talking about that idea of describing healthcare as a necessity, not necessarily as a right. Or it can be both, right? A right and a necessity. Thanks for this one, Kevin Wayne, who says Brazil was dealing with the Bolsonaro people who were doxing Neo families. Bolsonaro equals Muscite, austerity angel, not in agreement with Glenn. And thanks for this generous super chat, Jasmine Harrell, who says, I agree on the healthcare wording, but for different reasons. People don't believe everyone deserves rights because of capitalist conditioning. Necessity is better because it's personalized, but we can build to collective consciousness from there. I hear you, Jasmine. And yeah, I mean, basically moving beyond capitalism, is, I think, a big part of what our real left movement needs to be doing. And I think a good framing can be along the lines of we can do better than capitalism.
Yeah.
All right. I got through a few of them.
Okay. Paulus, Soros is not the left. He is center right. Good point. Unemployed Scholar, CNN is in the Philippines global reach. Yeah, they do have global reach. You're right about that. Kevin, Murdoch, 175 newspapers back the Iraq war. That's a good point, Kevin. My soap, no minimum wage, ? Thanks, Kevin. Seattle pizza joint cried over $15. Another store moved into their place after the first closed. Boo-hoo. Tamika, I'm single, no kids, and a skilled worker here, and I have 3 jobs. No, ma'am. Mike, Biden, we talked about that one. Kevin, Sabby, please get MMT Advocate on your show. They've been on here a couple of times. I've had MMT Advocates on here, but I can do that again. Thanks, Mark. Sabby, how about pulling muscles from a shell? Pulling muscles from a shell? I don't know what that is, but
that's a song by Squeeze. There's a song called Pulling
okay.
Muscles from Hell by Squeeze. Maybe that's the reference.
Thanks, in. Remember, for Biden, they are also counting deporter at the border ones as well. Thank you, Polis. Trump is focusing on immigrants because they are brown. Kevin, please show proof of border claims, i.e. 50 million in eating dogs and cats. And thanks for this as well, Kevin. Cubans in Florida, the rich fled because they hated Castro. Focus on the poor and missed their thug in chief, Batista. Thank you for this one as well. Evidence, please, of jail claims, Cuba/Venezuela. Thanks, Zoe. Black people will never be accepted as Americans. Get over your nationalism and xenophobia and know who your true enemy is. Yala says, is Dana a black woman? What an auntie, Tom. White supremacist mindset Case was trying to explain. Oh, boy. Thanks, Buster. Dana, how TF can you change anything when you don't even care why it's happening? Make it make sense. That's something I disagree with Dana about that. Thanks, Kevin. Enforce $25 minimum wage so companies will get busted for import of cheap labor. Ooh. Thanks, Unemployed Scholar. They bring new migrants in because new migrants don't know what the U.S. is really about. Thanks, Natalie. Gillens and Page 2014, big money. Get what it lobbies for 99.9% of the time. Thanks, Buster. Dana isn't ready to actually fix the problem. Trusting success. Jason, put a jewel in everyone's ear. We don't have nice things because the elites keep us down and fighting amongst each other. Thanks, Skylar. Sinclair Group Conservative bought hundreds of local news stations. Also, they are only 12 million undocumented in the U.S. in 2022 per Pew Research. Thanks, Kingian. Yes, Sabby, please break down how the feminist movement co-opted the civil rights movement. Oh, you know I'm going to do it. That'll be Friday night. Yes, that's a big one. Thanks, Polis. You really believe Trump won't censor leftists? I think what's going to happen, remember what he said, we'll police it a little bit. He said for TikTok. So like I said, the 50%, yeah, come on. We all know what that means. Thanks, Roger. Sab, Obama signed 0 executive orders on January 1st. You saw January 21st. Okay, gotcha. Sorry, thank you for that. Tyler, a supporter of both Gina and Joey along with Sabby and her show. Thank you. Alcos, who's been a member for 10 months, says the Constitution was removed from the White House Gov. Thoughts? As a First Nation, we are hopeful for Peltier. The U.S. government was in the wrong. Hello. Thank you, Tim. Hey, Sabby, I sent Chink on PBD to your email. Okay, thank you. I can watch that then. Shout out to Christian for the super sticker. Thank you, Courtney. You can tell by his facial expression that he's somewhat embarrassed. Oh, Obama. Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. Holy smokes. Thank you, Benny. Hi, this wasn't brought up during the panel when you guys debated immigration, but there seems to be a double standard. I feel because they are U.S. citizens relocating to Mexico and actually impacting Mexico's economy and not for the good of the Mexican citizens. Ooh, that's a good point there, Benny. I have seen those videos too of American expats that have moved to Mexico. There are a whole bunch of them on YouTube, you guys. Thanks, Courtney. No, he's not happy. Michelle is helping hurt his legacy in the public eye. You know he cares a lot about his legacy. Thank you, Baby Ethernet. So much for libs preaching resistance on Sirius. Thank you, China. It's giving trouble in paradise. Baby Ethernet says Obama's fake accent proves he has no red lines. Thanks, Roger. Eric, you lose weight. You on keto or Atkins? What? You can ask him about that in call-in.
I ain't getting no lighter.
This show is a trip. Thanks,
Roger's
Courtney. Michelle's tell-all book after the divorce is going to be fire. Oh man. Let's get, I think that's Rockfin, and then we can start calling, guys. Okay, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sabby and Eric, for the panel tonight. You're welcome. Roger, thank you. Total number of executive orders by past presidents. FDR, 2023. Truman 906, Ike 484, Ronald 381, Slick Willie 364. Nixon signed 346, LBJ signed 325, JC 320, Barry 277, Trump 220, first go around JFK 214, Ford 169, Bush Sr. 166, and Joe 160. Yeah. And I think the big test there is how many Trump signed in one day. Thank you for the Rumble rant, R. Dean Dubia. Build Back Better only allowed for renewable energy projects as long as they approve fossil fuel projects in tandem. Yep. Which is why, what's his name? Joe Manchin. That's why he signed it. That's why he voted for it, because it also included something for fossil fuel companies. So that's important to know. Okay. Guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into call in. The link is already pinned at the top of the chat.
Have you opened
I'm going to go ahead and open the room here on the show. I always do that just to make sure people can get in. I'm going to start this here. Ta-da. Based. And okay, I see people are already coming in. Let me mute my mic on Zoom. When you enter the Zoom room, just mute your mic. The other thing I wanted to say to you is if you want to speak, you want to raise your hand. So at the bottom of the screen, there's a option for reactions. If you click on reactions, you can raise your hand and that lets me know that you want to speak. So that's important.
Have you read the super chat about Michelle Tell book?
Yeah. I read that.
Now you're muted.
I'm not muted.
Or maybe I'm getting the other one. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right, then we're good.
Okay. I think people are coming into the Zoom room, which is good.
I'll get out of the way. See you.
And then you can also go to Eric. Did you put the link on Sabby Sabs 2? I'll take that as a yes. You can go to sabbysabs2.com to get that Zoom link and that passcode. But I don't think they're asking people for the passcode because people are joining in with no problem. So we'll go ahead and get started there, guys. If you join the live stream later, it's sabbysabs2.com. Most of you already know this. All right. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.